Chapter 205. Xiao family's second son had a fiancée. His Majesty had personally bestowed the marriage. His fiancée was a girl dressed as a man. She had fought alongside Xiao Ju on the battlefield and had outstanding military exploits. Now, she was the first female Marquis in Wei. Marquis Wu, and overnight, the streets of Shuo City, restaurants, and tea houses were all talking about the same thing. Some people said that Xiao family's second son was indeed extraordinary. His fiancée looked like a powerful woman who was not inferior to a man. Others said that he didn't want to marry the young miss of the Shun family and chose to marry an ordinary girl with no family background. Moreover, she was someone who didn't follow the rules and showed her face in public. No matter what outsiders said, the Xiao family was still enveloped in joy. Early in the morning of the next day, Bai Rongwei and Xiao Jing brought along the gifts they had prepared overnight. They grabbed Xiao Ju and went to the He family. Without a doubt, it attracted a lot of attention from the neighbors. He Sui complained incessantly in his heart. This Xiao family came too quickly. He didn't even have time to ask Qing Mei to go out and buy tea. Qing Mei was also helpless and could only pour a few cups of hot water. The whole family sat uneasily in the house and looked at the people across from him. He had just practiced boxing in the backyard. The Xiao family came in a hurry, and he didn't have time to change his clothes. Thus, after Xiao Jing and the others sat down, they saw a young girl wearing work clothes. Her hair was tied up in a bun, and she walked over while wiping the sweat on her forehead. He thought that Xiao Ju came alone today. We saw that Bai Rongwei and Xiao Jing were also there. He didn't know what to do and looked at Xiao Ju. Without waiting for Xiao Ju to speak, Xiao Jing opened her mouth and said, "Master He, Miss He, it's impolite of us to come here today. Please don't take offense." It's okay. He Sui smiled. He didn't sleep at all last night. In the middle of the night, he sat in the courtyard and stared at the sky for several hours. Hian's marriage came too suddenly, and he felt that it was unreal. Even if it was His Majesty who had granted the marriage, he was still not sure. Everyone in the world said that Xiao Ju was a perfect match, but such a family was never from the same world as them. Last night, he had spent too little time with Xiao Ju. He vaguely felt that this General Fengyan didn't have the temper of a young master and was much better than Fan Cheng. He Sui had heard a little about Xiao Ju's family. Now, Xiao Ju didn't have any elders, only her brother and sister-in-law. Xiao Jing was a famous gentleman in the capital. He didn't know much about Bai Rongwei. However, he was always afraid that his daughter would be at a disadvantage if she married into another family. Moreover, Hien had been spoiled by him. If other families didn't spoil her as much as his family did in the future, what would happen? He Sui didn't want Hien to marry into a rich family. As the saying goes, there was a reason why families of equal social status should be matched. Instead of climbing up the social ladder and being looked down upon, it was better to marry into an ordinary family and hold her in the palm of their hands. He Sui felt bitter in his heart. However, the current attitude of the Xiao family's brother and sister-in-law was somewhat beyond He Sui's expectations. Bai Rongwei and Xiao Jing weren't vain people. They were very grateful that Xiao Ju finally had a sweetheart. They were afraid that they would scare the girl away, so they were very considerate. As for the marriage between the two families, Bai Rongwei also discussed it with He Sui in detail. He Sui saw that the Xiao family was so serious, and the Shi too in his heart was relieved. It was always a good thing to be valued. Hien sat on the side, and there was no place for him to say anything. Fortunately, Hien Sheng went to school early in the morning. Otherwise, if he stayed in the room, he didn't know how he would make things difficult for the Xiao family. He Sui was also observing Xiao Ju. The first branch of the Xiao family seemed to be very reliable. He Sui didn't doubt how outstanding Xiao Ju was. However, it was rumored that Xiao Ju didn't get close to women and was cold and ruthless. He didn't know what she thought of Hien. He occasionally asked Xiao Ju questions about Hien, such as what Hien liked to eat, what she did, and how she performed in the Liangzhou Guard. Xiao Ju answered one by one. Hien, she was here as if she was a complete outsider. When this kind meeting finally ended, He Sui even tried to ask them to stay for dinner. "There's no need to trouble Master He," Bai Rongwei said with a smile. We have to go back to the residence first and inform the Xiao family's relatives about this. The imperial edict arrived in a hurry last night, so we didn't have time to inform them. Today, we should invite all our relatives and friends to have a good time together. Then, you must come another day, He Sui said with a bright smile. There wasn't enough rice in their rice jar to cook a meal, and they only had one servant, Qing Mei. If they really wanted to ask them to stay for dinner, they would only be able to serve porridge and side dishes when the guests were hungry. Ian looked at the jubilant He Sui and was speechless. He Sui sent by Romway and the others out. When the neighbors outside saw He Sui, they all cheered kindly. "Aya, congratulations, old He. You found a good in-law. Old He is so lucky to have raised such a good daughter. Why don't we have this kind of luck? When old He becomes rich in the future, don't forget about us. When Hien was born, I even held her." Hien thought that if the real lady he was here and heard these jokes, her face would have turned red with embarrassment. After all, she was like an iron wall, so when she heard these words, she also felt a little uncomfortable. Xiao Ju walked behind her. Bai Romway and the others seemed to deliberately leave some space for Hien and her talk. Hien asked, "Commander-in-Chief, what are you doing tomorrow?" Xiao Ju looked at her and asked, "What?" "I plan to go to Yuhua Temple on Mount Lian Snow to pray to Buddha tomorrow." Hien smiled and said, "Isn't it mid-autumn? I heard that the Buddha in Yuhua Temple is very good. Many people go up the mountain to pray at this time. Yinshang has to go to school, and Father has to go to work. I will go alone. If you have nothing to do, you can come with me. There is no harm in praying to Buddha." She always thought about that night when she met Xiao Ju. After all, it changed her life. Although it was inevitable that her fate would lead her to a tragic end, before that end, it taught her some courage. This courage continued until now, and it became a fate with Xiao Ju. Fate was long and long, like a piece of red silk hanging on an ancient tree. It was thrown away and trampled on, but it would still be picked up by another person. It would be hung again in a place where the wind and rain could not destroy it. How lucky! I have nothing to do tomorrow. Xiao Ju curled her lips and said, "I can go with you." "Okay," Hien said. "Then tomorrow morning, I will wait for you at the entrance of Xiao Mansion." As soon as he finished speaking, he heard Xiao Ju laugh. Hien asked curiously, "What are you laughing at?" "Lady, he forgot that he is a woman again," Xiao Ju said slowly, with a teasing look in her eyes. Hien understood and coughed lightly. "Between you and me, there is no need to be constrained by the views of the secular world. Go to sleep." He chuckled. "Tomorrow morning, I will come and pick you up." Hien nodded. The He family in the capital was happy and harmonious, full of laughter and laughter. In the other He family, the atmosphere was stagnant, and the mansion was filled with gloominess. He Rufei smashed the cup in his hand against the wall with a pa sound. The porcelain cup hit the corner of the wall, and the peony flower on the cup instantly shattered. The servants and maids in the room didn't dare to breathe loudly, and stood with their heads lowered. It was rumored that General Fei Hong was straightforward and generous, and didn't care about trifles. This was natural, but occasionally in the house, He Rufei would reveal a ruthless and malicious side. Even the servants of the He family would occasionally be confused. Why did the confident and awe-inspiring general, who was as dazzling as the sun, sometimes become as gloomy as a poisonous snake in the gutter, and the corners of his eyes would be gloomy and gloomy? "You can all leave." He Yuansheng stepped through the door and used a shoe to push aside the fragments in front of him and called for the servants to leave. After the door was closed, He Yuansheng sat down in front of He Rufei. "Right now, it is rumored that during the Battle of Hua Yuan, you used the 1,000-li retreat at night technique to subdue the enemy. You are like a different person from before, very different." He Yuansheng took a cup of tea and took a sip. "I think that for the next few days, you should say that you are sick and temporarily not go to court." "Why go to this extent?" He Rufei smiled coldly and said disapprovingly, "Victory and defeat are common in the military. It's just a military campaign. It's nothing." "Is that so?" He Yuansheng looked at him. "Then why have you been restless since you returned to the Fu last night? Is it because of that woman called He Yin?" Rufei suddenly raised his head to look at him. She's not He Yuanqing said calmly. I've already sent people to investigate. She's just the daughter of a military officer at the city gates. In the past, she didn't have any connection with our family. I don't know what method she used to hook up with the Xiao Ju, and even made a marquis. She just appeared in the palace once, and you're scared to this extent? Don't forget, the General Fei Hong. The speaker didn't mean it, but in the ears of those who paid attention, it was no different from sarcasm. Rufei's eyes darkened, and he said, Of course I know it's a trick. But at this point, just as someone was wantonly announcing that I'm different from the past, this woman called He Yin appeared. What a coincidence. She's also a woman dressed as a man and got promoted. Father, don't you think it's too much of coincidence? What do you want to say? We couldn't find anything wrong with that woman called He Yan's identity. Based on her status as a woman, she wouldn't dare to scheme against the He family. Moreover, everyone who knew about the matter was silenced, except for the Su family. Su Zhiheng is as timid as a mouse and wouldn't take the initiative to speak. Father, that woman called He Yin is Xiao Huijin's fiancée, and Xiao Huijin was very protective of this woman last night in the palace. You're saying that this was all planned by Xiao Huijin? He Yuanqing's brows furrowed. The He family and the Xiao family have no past grievances, so why would he do this? If he could, he didn't want to be enemies with Xiao Huijin. Even the powerful Prime Minister Su couldn't do anything to Xiao Huijin, much less that military governor Xiao. If he didn't agree with him, he could chop off the head of the son of a court official. What else wouldn't he do? When He Yin was studying at the Xianchang school, she was classmates with Xiao Ju. Rufei's gaze was deep. Perhaps he already discovered the secret of He Yan's identity. Now that we've already sided with Prime Minister Su, Xiao Huijin doesn't get along with Prime Minister Su, so he naturally wants to deal with our family. We're very secretive when doing things. Father, Rufei didn't wait for He Yuanqing to finish speaking and interrupted him. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. There are spies everywhere in the capital. Since we've already gotten involved in the grievances between the Xiao family and the Su family, we can't just stay out of it. He Yuanqing sighed slightly. He wanted to be careful when doing things. It would be best if he took all the benefits and let others bear all the risks. There were countless benefits to being on the same boat as Su Jingfu, but at the same time, they were being targeted by Xiao Huijin. This really was a terrible thing. We're already Prime Minister Su's people. Xiao Huijin won't let us go. Since that's the case, Rufei's eyes were filled with murderous intent. We should strike first. He Yuanqing frowned. If you want to deal with Xiao Huijin, you can't act rashly. Who said I want to deal with Xiao Huijin? You mean, didn't they find a woman to act mysterious? Rufei spoke slowly, his eyes flashing with endless malice. Let's start with that woman. He didn't expect that the appearance of the Xiao family would make He Sui start to have the idea of renovating the residence. He didn't think of changing to another residence. He Yin gave a portion of his previous silver to He Yuanqing, used a portion to bribe the Su family's Fu Wang, and kept some for himself for future use. In addition, although he was a marquis, he didn't have a residence or farmland bestowed by the emperor. He was also fined his salary for a year. Even if he became an official, he would be an official with clean hands. She originally wanted to go to the camp outside the city to see Wang Ba and the others. If the Hongshan people found out that she was a woman, she could imagine how shocked they would be. But she also felt that she hadn't thought of a suitable reason to go so rashly. It was better to wait a few more days. For now, she would go to Yuhua Temple on Mount Lianxue to pray to Buddha. Early the next morning, He Yin got up and changed into a crabshell green dress with hidden flowers. Although the He family wasn't rich, He Sui was still very willing to buy a dress for Lady He. It was just that in the past year, He Yin had grown a little taller. Although she was still slender, she was no longer as frail as before. She looked a lot more healthy. Qing Mei picked out a bit of her long hair and tied it behind her head, leaving the rest casually draped over her shoulders. He Yin looked at himself in the mirror and was still not used to it. Qing Mei smiled happily. Miss is still so beautiful. When you came back earlier, this servant almost didn't recognize you. He Yin thought in his heart, Now I really don't recognize you. He had asked Qing, made to pawn off all the jewelry from before. Now, he couldn't even find a hairpin. After searching in the drawer for a long time, Qing Mei finally found a wooden hairpin. He probably cut it himself. It wasn't worth much, so he didn't pawn it off at the time. Miss looks good with this. Military Governor Xiao will also like it when he sees it, Qing Mei murmured. He Yinsheng and He Sui had left early, but the two of them were very confident in Xiao Ju. When they found out that He Yin was going to mount Lian Xue with Xiao Ju, they didn't ask any more questions. However, perhaps it wasn't because they were confident in Xiao Ju, but because they were confident in He Yin. After all, ever since they found out that He Yin had chopped off the heads of 2 Yudo at the Liangzhou guards, the father and son looked at He Yin in a different light. All right. He Yin rubbed his head. Just be casual. He Yin grabbed the bundle on the table and smiled. I'm leaving first. She didn't ask Qing Mei to follow her. After all, Qing Mei walked too slowly. He Yin didn't know when Xiao Ju would arrive, so he opened the door first to see if there was anyone outside. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a carriage parked in front of his house. Fei Nu was driving the horse. The curtain of the carriage was half open, and Xiao Ju was sitting in the carriage reading a book. He Yin was startled. He trotted over and asked, When did you arrive? Why didn't you come in? I just arrived. Xiao Ju put down the book in her hands. I thought you weren't awake yet, so I waited. He Yin climbed into the carriage with ease. Chi Wu began to hurry. He Yin sat down and rubbed his hands. Have you eaten breakfast? Xiao Ju glanced at her and didn't say anything. She took out a mahogany box from the small table in the carriage. As soon as she opened it, a fragrant smell immediately assailed her nostrils. It was a piping hot pastry and a cup of sweet syrup. How did you know I haven't eaten? He Yin was greatly moved. They had to go up the mountain in the morning. Qing Mei had to comb his hair and had already woken up early. He Yin didn't have the heart to ask her to cook for him earlier, so he wanted to buy 2 steam buns before Xiao Ju arrived. He didn't expect Xiao Ju to be so thoughtful. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. The vegetarian food in the temple is limited. I'm afraid it won't be enough for you. Seeing that he had prepared breakfast, He Yin didn't mind his teasing that he was a rice bucket. He Yin chatted with Xiao Ju while eating. Governor, I heard that the Yuhua Temple on Mount Lianxue is very efficacious. Once upon a time, there was a very poor man. He was so poor that his family didn't have enough food to eat. One day, he went up the mountain to chop firewood. Suddenly, there was thunder and rain. He hid in the Yuhua Temple to avoid the rain. At that time, the Yuhua Temple was just a dilapidated temple. The beggar looked at the Buddha statue and said, Buddha, please show me a way to survive. The old people in my family are starving to death. As a result, when he fell asleep in the temple, he had a dream. In the dream, Buddha told him to go home and dig a hole next to the well in the courtyard. He deliberately looked at Xiao Ju's expression. However, this person just looked at him with a faint smile. He was not in a hurry to continue, nor did he urge him to continue. It was as if he was listening to an irrelevant gossip. He had almost suspected that he had said something wrong. If Wang Ba was here, he would definitely ask anxiously, what happened after that? What happened after that? However, since the story had started, he naturally had to continue. After this person woke up, he still remembered what happened in the dream. When he went home, he carried a hoe and dug a hole next to the well at night. As he dug out a bag of gold from the ground. After this poor man obtained the gold, he used the gold to do business. Later, it became better and better. He became a local tycoon. After he had money, he went to the Yuhua Temple again and gave the Yuhua Temple's abbot a generous amount of incense money. He also helped to renovate the temple. The Buddha statue was also given a golden body. After that, the Yuhua Temple became more and more efficacious. People said that the more incense money one donated, the more one's wishes would come true. After finishing the story, he drank the last mouthful of sweet syrup. What do you think, Commander-in-Chief? Do you think the legend is very powerful? Xiao Ju did not comment. Lady Yi's story is not bad. This story was indeed made up by her. She had already forgotten from whom she had heard it from. Of course, it was not Yuhua Temple, but some other temple. However, it was enough to scare people. In the end, it was directly said by Xiao Ju. Ian almost doubted whether his ability to scare people had really deteriorated. As if sensing his frustration, Xiao Ju said, "The Yuhua Temple's abbot is very close to my brother. Ian, so your story is too fake." Ian was silent. It was indeed a little awkward to lie in front of someone she knew. However, she looked at Xiao Ju. "Okay, this temple is not Yuhua Temple. However, the story is true. Commander-in-Chief, do you believe that sometimes things that happen in dreams can be real?" Xiao Ju dreams. Have you ever thought that maybe everything that has happened to us now, whether it was in Liangzhou, Jiang, or the Rundu, is actually just a dream? When you wake up from the dream, you become another person. Everything that you originally had is gone. Her voice was clear and seemed to have other meanings. Xiao Ju could not help but look at her. He thought for a while and said after a while, "It doesn't matter if it's a dream." Ian looked at him. "When you wake up from the dream, you can start all over again." Ian was stunned. He could not help but lower his head and laugh. She was right. When she woke up from the dream, it was fine to start all over again. Just like in her previous life, she met Xiao Ju. Then she died. In her previous life, she became a general, but she also helped others. However, when she woke up from the dream and started all over again, she still met Xiao Ju and became He Yin on the battlefield again. Even if you lost something that was destined to be yours temporarily, it would return in another way. The moon and her sword were the same. It was a sunny day with many pilgrims. At the entrance of Yuhua Temple, a carriage stopped. A young woman helped a middle-aged woman out of the carriage. The middle-aged woman was beautiful, but her face was pale and she looked haggard. The woman beside her looked similar to her. They were mother and daughter. "Mother, walk slowly. Be careful," Yishining said softly. Madame He nodded gently. Yishining sighed in her heart. When she left home to marry, Madame He's health was already poor. Now it was getting worse. This morning, she went to the He family to pick up her mother in the carriage. When she held her mother's arm, she felt that Madame He's arm was so thin that she could hold it easily. It was so thin that it was frightening. "How did father take care of you? Are all the doctors in the residence useless?" Yishining was dissatisfied. "How about I ask my husband to go to the palace and invite an imperial doctor to take a look at you?" "Mother, how can I rest assured when you are like this?" Madame He waved her hand. "I'm fine. Don't bother." Yishining was distressed and helpless. She helped Madame He slowly walk inside. The He family didn't like to go up the mountain to worship Buddha. Today, only the mother and daughter went up the mountain. The guards were waiting outside the temple. Yishining took Madame He to see the temple abbot first and presented the promised incense money. She didn't really want to come to worship Buddha today. She just wanted to find an excuse to see her mother and tell her what she found in the Su family. But now, seeing Madame He's weak appearance, she couldn't say anything. Forget it. She didn't want her mother to worry about these things. As for the doubts about Su Jiheng, she should let her find out by herself. Anyway, there was still a long way to go. Chapter 206. Yuhua Temple was filled with incense, and there were many carriages parked in front of the temple. Yin and Xiao Ju got off the carriage, and Fei Nu drove the carriage to the side to wait for them. The two of them did not bring any maids or servants with them, and they were very eye-catching. People who came to worship Buddha could not help but take a few more glances at them. There were those who didn't know the person, so they just looked around. There were those who knew the officials' family members. After recognizing Xiao Ju, they guessed He Yan's identity. However, they didn't dare to talk about it in front of him, so they stayed far away. The rules for worshiping Buddha were simple. Ordinary people would donate some incense, oil, and rice. Those who were richer would donate some money. Xiao family did not lack money, and Fei Nu had already prepared it. After receiving the incense from the monks, they had to enter the temple to worship. Xiao Ju did not enter. Ian asked him why he did not enter, and he only said, "I don't believe in Buddha." They were already in front of the temple, and he said that he did not believe in Buddha in other people's territory. This person was really arrogant and lawless. However, this kind of thing did not matter if he believed in it or not. She could not force Xiao Ju to worship Buddha. She let Xiao Ju stay outside and enter the temple. He knelt down on the praying mat. The golden Buddha statue she made up for the wealthy merchants looked down on all living beings mercifully. She bowed down and kowtowed sincerely. She said in her heart, she didn't ask for anything else. She only asked for those who were harmed by Hirufei and were burdened by her to be reincarnated earlier. She wanted to be safe and healthy in her next life. After offering incense and lighting the lamp, Yin walked out of the temple. Xiao Ju was waiting for her in front of the temple. Seeing her come out, he asked casually, "What did you wish for?" "I hope that there will be no more wars in the world." Yin put her hands together and pretended to be serious. "I hope that the world will be peaceful so that you and I can relax." These words were not false. The matter of Yudo had not been completely resolved. It was said that the imperial court was still debating whether to advocate war or peace. Even now, no conclusion had been reached. After donating incense money and praying to Buddha, one could even have a vegetarian meal in the temple. The vegetarian food of Yuhua Temple was also one of the best. However, Yin was blind the last time he came here. Even if it was a mountain delicacy, it was tasteless to him. He had already forgotten what it tasted like. Now that he thought about it, he was actually looking forward to it. When they passed the ancient tree, they could see that the huge ancient tree was rooted beside the mountain temple. The branches were as vast as the clouds and mist. They were originally green and glistening, but now they were covered in layers of red. When they got closer, they could see that the red on the branches were strands of red silk. On the red silk, there were words written, which were probably the wishes of the writer. It was said that if one hung one's wish on the ancient tree would manifest its spirit. Yin remembered that he had hung the red silk here before, and he couldn't help but stop. "This ancient tree is very spiritual," he said to Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju leisurely said, "You want to make up a story again?" "No, it really is very spiritual." Yin smiled and thought that in her previous life, she had hung a wish on the tree. She hoped that she could see the moon again. At that time, when she wrote these words on the red silk, she felt that it was a pipe dream. Not to mention the moon, just the fact that her eyes could see the light again sounded inconceivable. However, at this impossible moment, even after her death, she was able to be reborn in a hopeless situation and see the moon again. "In the future, when I have more money," Yin said, "I will buy a lot of fertilizer and water this ancient tree to show my gratitude and sincerity." Xiao Ju choked. "Your sincerity is really different." The guest house of Yuhua Temple was a little in front of the courtyard where the monks lived. For those who donated less, many people ate in the same place. For those who donated more, they had their own courtyard. Most of the time, there was only one person in each room. There were fewer people, and the environment was more elegant. Although he was somewhat speechless at the difference in treatment, it was a good thing that there were fewer people. He didn't want to eat a vegetarian meal and be secretly watched by others. Now, because of the marriage bestowed by the emperor when Xian, he and Xiao Ju appeared in front of the world. It took a lot of courage for her to do so. Even though she was a famous person in the past, at least she had a mask to cover her face. Now, she didn't even have the slightest bit of cover. In broad daylight, she was like a white peacock shipped by a sea merchant from a foreign country. It was so rare that everyone wanted to see and talk about it. They sat down in the guest house. Not long after, the monk in green brought in many plates of vegetarian dishes. It was indeed very rich. There were steamed white jade Buddha hand, sweet and sour bitter gourd, steamed wild mountain pepper winter gourd, purple potato cakes, celestial tofu. It was much colder on the mountain than it was at the foot of the mountain. After rushing for an entire morning, they were already hungry. Now that the hot vegetarian dishes were in front of them, Yin couldn't help but have a big appetite. He gave Xiao Ju a pair of chopsticks and said, "The money for the sesame oil was not wasted. Governor, if you're not full, can I have another set?" "Xiao Ju," he said, "as you wish." Yin didn't stand on ceremony. She ate boldly. In comparison, Xiao Ju ate more elegantly. Not long after they started eating, there was a knock on the door of the guest house. A monk led 2 people in. For a rich family like theirs, the guest house was small and exquisite. Usually, one family was enough. However, the weather was good today, and it was the Mid-Autumn Festival. There were many pilgrims who came to Yuhua Temple to burn incense. It was probably not enough to accommodate all of them, so they could only squeeze with Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju frowned slightly. Just as she was about to say something, Hien said, "It's okay. Let them in. I eat very quickly. It's not a problem." It wasn't easy for her to gain some fame in Shuo capital. She hadn't officially fought with He Rufei yet. She didn't want to be accused of being overbearing and unreasonable. Xiao Ju thought about it and didn't say anything. The two people that the monks brought in were two women. One was older and the other was younger. He had only glanced at them briefly. When he saw the older woman's face, his heart skipped a beat. He couldn't control himself, and the chopsticks in his hand fell to the ground. He hurriedly bent down to pick them up. At the same time, he hid the shock on his face. This movement attracted the attention of the two people who came in. The two women stopped in their tracks and looked at Hien. Hien had just picked up his chopsticks when the monk came over and said, "Benefactor, please wait for a moment. I will go and get a clean set for you." Hien didn't say anything. The younger woman had already followed Hien's gaze and saw Xiao Ju. She blurted out, "General Feng Yun." Hien subconsciously looked at Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju frowned slightly. She seemed unhappy. He Xining was very surprised. He didn't expect to see Xiao Ju here. Speaking of which, she had only seen Xiao Ju once. It was when she went shopping with a friend. She saw a group of people riding horses through the streets. The people and carriages on the side of the road all avoided them. The man in the lead was handsome and outstanding. At that time, her friend beside her told her, that was Dao Wei's General Feng Yun. It was probably because this man's appearance was too outstanding and the impression he gave people was too vivid. Therefore, when she saw Xiao Ju, it overlapped with her memory. However, everyone knew that this military governor Zhao's temper wasn't very good. For a moment, He Xining supported Madame He and didn't know whether to advance or retreat. He was afraid that if he wasn't careful, he would offend this vicious and merciless military governor. However, Madame He didn't care about this. She only pulled He Xining inside and sat down at the table next to Hien's. He Xining curiously looked at Xiao Ju. There were many rumors about this military governor Xiao. However, there was one rumor that had never changed. It was that he didn't get close to women. However, this rumor was broken a few days ago at the celebration banquet. His Majesty personally bestowed a marriage between him and a woman. Xiao Ju protected that woman in front of all the civil and military officials in the main hall. When the news spread to the ears of the people in Shuojing, it shattered the dreams of many young ladies. On the day that Su Zhihan came back from the celebration banquet, his mood wasn't very good. Therefore, he didn't tell He Xining about this matter. Therefore, this matter was only spread to the entire residence the next day when the maidservants in the residence went out to buy goods and heard about it. Speaking of which, Xiao Ju's fiancée wasn't a simple woman. She actually dared to dress up as a man and go to the battlefield to kill Yudo. She even became the first female Marquis of Dawei, Marquis Wuan. The most coincidental thing was that this Wuan Marquis had the same name as her deceased sister, Grand Mistress Su, who had passed away due to illness. However, her sister, Hien, was very weak. She had to spend many years in the countryside residence to recuperate and take medicine every day. Not to mention going to the battlefield to kill Yudo. Even walking a few steps would cause her to gasp for breath. Therefore, although their names were the same, their temperaments were completely different. He Xining looked at the woman beside Xiao Ju. The woman was young and beautiful, and there was a heroic spirit between her eyebrows. He Xining guessed that the woman who could make Xiao Ju, who did not get close to women, be so close to her was not the young mistress of the Xiao family, but his sweetheart fiancée, Wuan Marquis Hien. He Xining sized her up. Hien just lowered her head and pretended to eat seriously. However, there were thousands of thoughts running through her mind. She couldn't help but look at the person facing her several times, Madame He. That was her biological mother. Hien didn't have a deep impression of Madame He. Compared to He Yuan Liang, Madame He didn't like to go out. Usually, unless it was a festival, she would only stay in her courtyard. Perhaps because she was a soft-hearted woman, Madam He was afraid that something would go wrong. He often saw He Yuan Liang, but he rarely saw Madam He. However, ever since Yin found out about his true identity, he often wanted to see what kind of person his biological mother was. He vaguely felt that she was a very quiet and gentle woman. Sometimes, she seemed a little dull. He Yuan Liang always had a smile on his face, which was very popular with women. There were also a few concubines living in the second branch. There were also concubines who gave birth to sons and daughters of concubines. In terms of favoritism, He Yuan Liang's second wife was definitely not the one that He Yuan Liang liked the most. However, He Yuan Liang never neglected his second wife. He had never done anything like favoring his concubine and neglecting his wife. At least, before He Yan's previous life, He Yuan Liang's second wife lived a good life in the mansion. One year during a family banquet, He Yan sat at the same table as Madam He when he was eating at home. At that time, she was still young. She was only 10 years old. She sat opposite Madam He. Probably because she was too curious, she looked up at Madam He more often. Later, during family banquets, He Yan and Madam He didn't sit at the same table. She didn't expect to meet her biological mother here without any warning. No matter how much he hated the He family, He Yan's mood wasn't as indifferent as it seemed on the surface when he faced Madam He. He Xining carefully pulled Madam He and whispered, "The one opposite is General Feng Yun and Military Governor Xiao. The one beside him is most likely Marquis Wu and He Yan, who was betrothed by His Majesty a few days ago." As soon as these words came out, Madam He stopped picking up her chopsticks and looked up at the opposite table. Now that the news of Xiao Huijin being betrothed to His Majesty was known by the whole Shuo Jing, from the officials and nobles to the common people. Even the beggars on the street knew that his fiancée was called He Yan. It was impossible that Madam He didn't know about it. She couldn't help but be startled when she suddenly heard someone with the same name as her dead daughter. On the other side, Xiao Ju noticed He Yan's sudden silence and asked her, "Why aren't you saying anything?" Before the mother and daughter came, she kept chattering, but after they came, she didn't say anything. So what if she was recognized? He Yan was never someone who acted according to other people's expressions. Afraid that Xiao Ju would see through her, He Yan smiled and randomly found a topic. "Military Governor, is it really okay to keep the black jade you gave me before? What's wrong with it? I just think that it's a bit too precious." He Yan stuffed a potato biscuit into her mouth and stared at the table. She didn't look at the other two people in the room, "But your parents are really good at naming you. Ju, it means double jade. The Empress Dowager gave you a double-colored jade. It's really suitable." Xiao Ju smiled. "Your name is also good." He Yan thought for a moment. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything and just lowered her head to eat. Madam He stared at He Yan's movements. He Yan was fond of sweet things, so she always ate the beets first. Although she wasn't refined and reserved, she was very frugal and didn't leave a single grain of rice behind. If she encountered a dish that she didn't like, she wouldn't throw it away. She just paused a little, as if to pave some courage for herself, and then she would eat it all in one go and never touch the plate again. As Madam He watched, her face gradually changed. Her originally empty and numb eyes began to become more and more emotional, as if she couldn't help but cry. Xiao Ju's back was facing Madam He, so she didn't see Madam He's strange behavior. He Yan saw it, but he pretended not to know and changed the topic to Xiao Ju. He Xining asked in a low voice, "Mother, why aren't you eating?" The girl seemed to feel something and looked over. Madam He quickly lowered her head and picked up her chopsticks to eat a mouthful of rice. No one saw her tear fall into the bowl. During this meal, except for Xiao Ju and He Xining, Madam He and He Yan ate with different thoughts. He Yan came a little earlier and ate quickly. After the meal, He Yan put down his chopsticks. Xiao Ju had already finished eating. When she finished, she said, "Let's go." He Yan nodded, and the two of them walked out together. Not long after they left, suddenly, someone's voice came from behind. "Miss, please wait." He Yan looked back and saw Madam He running towards him. He Xining was a little surprised. as if she didn't expect her mother to do such a thing. Madam, he was not in good health, so after running a few steps, she was gasping for breath. As a madam of an official's family, her behavior was somewhat rude. However, Madam, he didn't care about this and walked towards them. Xiao Ju frowned. Who are you? I'm the second madam of the He family in the capital. Madam, he glanced at Xiao Ju. The young man's indifferent expression made her a little timid. Even so, she still stared straight at He Yin. She was reluctant to move her eyes away for even half a second. He Yin nodded with a smile. Madam, I'm sorry. He Xining also caught up and secretly pulled Madam He's sleeve. There was a hint of blame in her eyes. After He Yin left, they still hadn't finished their meal. He Xining wanted to talk to Madam He about the two of them, but Madam He suddenly stood up and chased after him. Everything happened so fast that she didn't have time to stop it. However, He Xining knew that she shouldn't provoke the commander-in-chief of the Right Army for no reason. Every official in the Shuo capital knew that Xiao Huijin wasn't someone to be trifled with. If she pursued the matter, she didn't want to add more trouble to the He family. Madam, what's the matter? He Yin asked politely. Madam, he looked at her, as if she was looking at another person through her. Her voice was soft, as if she was afraid of disturbing the young lady in front of her, or as if she was coaxing her 3-year-old daughter. You are called Ian? Ian looked at the woman in front of her. In her memory, Madam, he was still very young. Unlike Madam, he who was meticulous and strict, Madam, he had a gentle and kind face. At first glance, she could tell that she was a very good person. He Xining had also seen her younger sister break a very expensive vase. Madam, he didn't get angry. Instead, she would hold He Xining in her arms and check if her hand was scratched by the broken vase. He Yin was very envious at that time. She felt that her biological mother was really better than her mother. Later, when she returned home after the war, she became He Yin again. Madam, he also came to visit several times. However, they had missed each other for too long. Even if they sat in the same room, they felt awkward and alienated. On the day of the wedding, Madam, he came to see her off. He Yin sat in the room. When Madam, he helped her cover her head, she said something. She took He Yan's hand and said slowly, you have to be good in the future. That one sentence made He Yan's eyes wet under the veil. Unfortunately, she couldn't even achieve such a simple wish of being good in the end. Even when she was blind in the Su family, Madam, he didn't come to visit her even once because she was sick. The woman in front of her had aged a lot. She was no longer as young as she remembered. He Yin could even see that there were some gray hairs on her temples. She was old. He Xining looked at Xiao Ju. She was nervous and hurriedly explained to He Yin, I'm sorry, Miss He. It's because you have the same name as my sister, so my mother, she didn't know how to continue. If she said that He Yin had the same name as a dead person, who knew if the Marquis would feel that it was unlucky and displeased? Madam, he looked at He Yin and asked in a trembling voice, Miss He, why are you called He Yin? This question really came out of nowhere. He Yin stared at her. After a moment, she smiled carelessly and replied in a relaxed tone, Who knows? Normal girls don't have the name Yin. The river is clear and the sea is Yin. Maybe my parents knew when I was born that I would have to go to the battlefield to protect the safety of the people. If that's the case, this name is quite different from normal people. There was a hint of self-mockery in her words. The river is clear and the sea is peaceful. It naturally sounded like a flourishing age, but she herself was on the battlefield. Not only did her blood-related relatives not feel sorry for her, they even wanted to squeeze every last bit of value out of her. It was unavoidably chilling. He Yin thought that her desire for family affection had been obliterated when she was very young. Since there was no hope, she wouldn't be too sad when she was disappointed. Now that she was in another He family, she received warmth that she didn't have before. When she met Madam He again, the grievances that were deliberately buried deep in her heart were all born. After saying that, He Xining didn't feel anything, but Madam He's expression changed. Her face was drained of blood in a split second, and she almost collapsed. He Yin nodded at them. If there's nothing else, we'll leave first. She gently pulled Xiao Ju's clothes and walked forward. Xining waited until the two people walked far enough before she complained in a low voice. Mother, what's wrong with you? You suddenly rushed out and scared me. It's not like you don't know what kind of person military governor Xiao is. Fortunately, they didn't make a fuss just now. If they were angry, big brother and husband may not be able to do anything. Mother. Xining suddenly stopped talking because she saw a big drop of tears in the eyes of the woman in front of her. The tears streaked across the corners of her eyes, like cold dew in the middle of the night, with broken sorrow. Xining knew that, madam, he was thinking of her dead elder sister. After Hian's death, her mother's health hadn't been good. The doctor always said that she would be fine after some rest, but Xining also knew that it was a psychological problem. Her mother's heart was always thinking about her elder sister's death, so she became like this. But there was something she didn't understand. She always thought that her mother was always indifferent to her elder sister. Maybe it was because Hian had always been recuperating in the village and didn't get close to her mother in the Fu. So after a long time, it was difficult for her mother to have the same feelings as her. But after Hian's death, her mother was so sad that she understood that she wasn't heartless. But if that was the case, why did her mother alienate her so much in the beginning? There was also his father, He Yuan Liang, who was very nice to everyone. He was always smiling and had a very amiable appearance. However, regarding Hian's death, he didn't show that much sadness. In short, Hian seemed to be a subtle existence in the He family, and Hian's death made those seemingly normal things finally reveal the strangeness underneath. She was full of questions, but no one could answer her. No one would answer her questions. Xining held Madame He's hand and didn't say anything in the end. She took a handkerchief to wipe the tears from the corners of her mother's eyes and said in a low voice, Mother, let's go back. Chapter 207. When they went down the mountain, Hian was quieter than before. Xiao Ju asked, Are you still thinking about what happened just now? Hian was afraid that she would find out, so he casually lied, I just felt a little sad when I heard what that young lady said. Xiao Ju paused for a moment, then said lightly, Don't worry, you won't become the previous young Mistress Su. Hian lowered his head and smiled. He didn't know what to feel. Before this, she had already died once. But today, when she saw He heir foreign again, she found that her mother didn't completely care about her. But if her mother really cared about her, why did He heir foreign treat her so strangely when she was Hian? When the He family and the Su family conspired to kill her eyes, when she was accidentally drowned, did He heir foreign know the truth? Hian would rather she didn't know. Ignorance is blameless. But even if she didn't know about this matter, Madam, he must have known about the matter of her, and he Rufei swapping identities back then. What kind of feelings did a mother have when she pushed her own daughter out? She was clearly so close, yet she couldn't call her mother. He narrowed his eyes. Thinking about it, she should be making a trip to the Su family in a few days. She didn't know what clues Fu Wang had found. After the palace banquet, He Rufei and Su Zhiheng would definitely suspect her. She had to hurry. Xining first sent He heir foreign back to her residence with the imperial bodyguards and servants before returning to the Su family. Su Zhiheng was in his study. He didn't go to court today. For some reason, ever since he returned from the celebration banquet, Su Zhiheng rarely went out. People outside said that he was sick. Xining naturally knew that Su Zhiheng was fine. Rather than saying that he was sick, it was more like he had something on his mind. Sometimes, when Xining talked to him, he could feel that Su Zhiheng was obviously absent-minded. Xining just pretended not to know. A smart woman should know how to show her stupidity at the right time. This was the rule she learned in the He family's backyard. But no matter how stupid he pretended to be, he had to have a scale in his heart. He couldn't pretend to be stupid, or else he would really be stupid. That night, Su Zhiheng, who was rummaging through Hian's room before she died, looked very different from usual. Xining had a layer of suspicion in his heart. When she married into the Su family, she brought along a servant girl with her. Right now, she didn't dare to use anyone from the Su family. She only dared to use the people around her. She wanted to check on some things. If these things had nothing to do with him, Xining wouldn't care. But all these things showed that Hian's death was not that simple. Not to mention Su Jihing's strangeness. Today at Yuhua Temple, his mother met Marquis Wuan, who had the same name and surname, and also lost her self-control. If Yin had any inside information, who knew if she would become the next Yin? In the He family, women didn't have any status. Even if she was the daughter born by Madame He, her marriage had been arranged early on. A woman's marriage was to pave the way for a man's career. As for whether the person she married was a human or a ghost, good or bad, it wasn't important. Everything was based on benefits. This was also why when He Yin and Su Jihing married, the daughter of the He family was so jealous of He Yin. It was because her marriage seemed to be the best choice that the He family could choose for her. But now, it seemed that there was a hidden story. Xiao Lu, she ordered her personal servant girl, in these few days, secretly ask around in the Fu. When my older sister He Yin was still alive, what kind of discord happened between her and that concubine mother surnamed He, and what kind of mistake concubine mother He committed to be driven out? Eldest young mistress, why are you asking about this? Xiao Lu asked curiously. I have my own ideas. He Xining didn't want to say more. You only need to remember that this matter needs to be kept secret. You must not let outsiders know. Give more money. Also, it's best not to mention my older sister. Start with concubine mother He. This way, even if she wasn't careful and was discovered by the Su family, she could say that she was jealous and wanted to know how that concubine mother in the past received Su Jihing's favor, and not expose that she was secretly investigating the cause of He Yan's death. Everyone in the Su family never took the initiative to mention He Yan and avoided He Yan's matters. There had to be a problem. He Xining looked at the bright sunlight outside and suddenly felt that the spacious and bright courtyard of the Su family had become a bit eerie and terrifying. But even if it was for herself, she couldn't live so muddle-headedly. After praying to the Buddha, He Yin and Xiao Ju didn't directly return to their Fu. Instead, they went to the Liang Province Guard's camp outside the city. The Nanfu soldiers were more reserved, but Tianlang didn't allow them to talk too much about their superior's private matters. Shen Han couldn't control the Liang Province Guard. He Yin had eaten and lived with a group of soldiers and had already formed a deep friendship. Now that he heard that his brother had become a woman and had even become his superior's fiancée, in any case, other than training the soldiers, the most popular thing that everyone was interested in recently was talking about this matter. When He Yin and Xiao Ju arrived, they were still training the soldiers. He Yin thought about it and then said to Xiao Ju, Governor, why don't you not go in with me? Just stay outside with Shun Jiaodo and the others. If you go in, even if they have questions, they won't dare to ask. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. Okay. Then she went to find Tianlang. Ever since he returned to the capital, he had been busy with the Su Jingfu's matters. In order to make Su Jingfu lower his guard, he rarely came here. Every time, he would only stay for a short while and then leave in a hurry. After Xiao Ju left, He Yin sat outside the training grounds and waited for them. Not long after, the training ended. The soldiers went to eat in twos and threes with their arms around each other's shoulders. Someone saw He Yin sitting at the edge. He Yin was wearing women's clothing today, so they didn't recognize him immediately. A soldier even approached him warmly and asked with concern, Miss, who are you looking for? He Yin looked at him, stood up, and patted the dust off his body. He smiled. We haven't seen each other for a while. Don't you recognize me? He Yin saw that the new soldier was still staring at him blankly. He seemed familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him before. He Yin reminded him, I am the number 1 Liang Province Guard. This time, the new soldier became excited. He swallowed his saliva and howled, Brothers, He Yin is here. His voice was so loud that He Yin couldn't help but dig his ears. Immediately after, he saw a large group of people like cats that had smelled something fishy, hula. All of a sudden they all surrounded him, their mouths saying, Where is it? Where is it? Show me. Show me. He Yin was surrounded by the crowd in an instant. Now that he was dressed as a woman, everyone finally realized that he was indeed a woman. The new soldiers of the Liang Province Guard didn't try to curry favor with him like they usually did. They even seemed a bit awkward. Some people even blushed and didn't dare to look at He Yin. They looked at their shoes on the ground and asked in a small voice, That Brother, Miss He, how come you're a woman? He cupped his hands in apology to everyone and said in a clear voice, "At the time, I really had difficulties and accidentally joined the army. I didn't mean to deceive you all. Now that the truth is out, I thought I should come and apologize to you all. I am indebted to everyone for taking care of me in the past. Even though I am a woman, we are still brothers." These words were spoken in the same tone as before. Only then did everyone's previous restraint dissipate slightly. Another voice came from the crowd. "Everyone, get out of the way. Where is she?" Ian looked up and saw Wang Ba's group parting the crowd and walking in his direction. When they were in the Liang Province Guard, they had the best relationship with He Yin. However, even with such a good relationship, they still didn't realize that He Yan's identity was strange. As a result, they were the ones who were most shocked. Wang Ba was the angriest. So he had been calling a girl boss for a year and a half. Because of this matter, he had almost become the laughingstock of the Liang Province Guard these past few days. Everyone wanted to use this matter to make fun of him. He didn't expect that He Yin would come knocking on his door today. He had to come and demand justice. Just as he was thinking, Wang Ba had already walked in front of He Yin. However, just as he was about to speak, he couldn't say a word. Facing a lively and delicate little girl who was looking at him with a sweet smile, even the most heartless man would be embarrassed to scold her. As a result, He Yin saw that the big guy in front of him had a face full of anger and couldn't say a word. However, Xiao Mai squeezed out. He was young and passionate. After being surprised at the beginning, he was happy. Now that he saw He Yin, he was greatly surprised. "Hey, go! I didn't expect you to be so beautiful. You're too amazing." "What he go?" Hong Shan slapped him on the head. "Call her Missy." He didn't know what to do. After all, they had slept in the same bed before. "Brother He, how can you be a girl?" Jiang Jiao also found it hard to accept. He had always admired He Yin because He Yin was about the same age as him. However, He Yin could always give him careful guidance on martial arts. He felt that he had benefited greatly from having such a close friend. Now that his close friend had become a girl, Jiang Jiao didn't know what to feel. He originally thought that this must be a misunderstanding and that the information broker had gotten something wrong. Now that he saw He Yin standing gracefully in the crowd, he knew that he couldn't deceive others and himself. She really was a girl. Among them, Huang Xiong and Shi Tu were the calmest. Shi Tu didn't like to show his emotions on his face. Huang Xiong was old and had traveled extensively. There was nothing he hadn't seen before. It was shocking to hear that a girl dressed as a man, but it wasn't new. However, some things that he didn't understand before were now answered. For example, why could he only live in the same room and be so close to Xiao Ju? It turned out that it was inconvenient. Xiao Ju wanted to take care of his fiancée. However, this jade-faced commander-in-chief was indeed as ruthless as outsiders said. She was obviously a sweetheart. When He Yin first arrived in Liangzhou, he didn't neglect any training. She had also lived in a bungalow before. Every morning, she would follow the team obediently and run with weights. If it were another man, he would probably have a tender heart for the fairer sex. "Are you really going to marry the commander-in-chief?" Xiao Mai asked curiously. "Will I have to call you Second Madam Xiao in the future?" Xiao Mai was a straightforward person. She said whatever she wanted to say, but He Yan's face suddenly turned red. If someone else were to call him Second Madam Xiao, he would feel very uncomfortable. His embarrassment was noticed by the recruits of the Liangzhou guards. They all started to jeer, Brother He is shy." I didn't think that I would be able to see Brother He being shy in my lifetime. Heavens, my life wasn't in vain. As the group of men talked, they went back to calling him Brother. They probably felt that it was easier to call him that. Hong Shan scolded Xiao Mai. "Be careful. Don't talk nonsense. She's a girl. Do you want people to talk about her like that?" Xiao Mai covered her head and said aggrievedly, "What's there to be shy about?" The men around her laughed. "That's right. Brother He didn't even blush when he claimed to be the #1 Liangzhou guard in front of everyone. Aren't you embarrassed? Even the #1 Liangzhou guard was taken by a girl. You guys can't even beat a little girl. What a waste of your tall stature. Is she an ordinary girl? Is a girl who was invited by military governor Xiao to be his wife an ordinary girl? If he can fight, Why don't you do it? I'm not going. You do it. The noise from outside the martial arts field traveled into the small room. Shunhan wiped the sweat from his forehead. Liang Ping, Ma Demi, and the other instructors stood in the room, not daring to move. Who knew if Xiao Ju suddenly came to settle scores? Speaking of which, every instructor here had treated Yin harshly before, especially Liang Ping. However, it was hard to say. For example, when they soaked in the hot spring on Baiwa Mountain, everyone present had a share. However, it seemed that their commander-in-chief was in a good mood. He had no intention of punishing anyone. He just sat in a room and watched the training of the new soldiers. Have you sent the money to them? Shenhan answered, I've already sent it. I've even visited them personally. Some of the new soldiers who died in the Liangzhou Guard were unable to return to Shuo capital with them. They had to go door to door to comfort their families. Don't slack off on your training for the next few days, Xiao Ju said. The instructors nodded. After another hour, it was time for them to leave. Xiao Ju stood up and walked out. Shenhan said, Commander-in-Chief. Xiao Ju turned around and looked at him. Shenhan smiled awkwardly. Congratulations. After seeing the new soldiers, it was almost evening. Yin and Xiao Ju returned to the city. Xiao Ju first sent Yin back to the He family before returning to her residence. I'll be very busy these few days. Before Xiao Ju could say anything, Yin took the initiative to answer. There are still many procedures to be completed for the conferment of Marquis, Wu and Commander-in-Chief. You don't have to worry about me these few days. Do you need help? Yin waved his hand. No need. I'll be fine by myself. After Xiao Ju left, he heaved a sigh of relief. His relaxed days were coming to an end. Yin tidied himself up. He didn't want Yi Sui and Yun Sheng to see any clues. He pinched his face until he squeezed out a smile. Then, he stepped through the door. On the other hand, Xiao Ju returned to her residence. Xiao Jing and Bai Rongwei were not around. Bai Guo was watering the flowers in the courtyard. When she saw Xiao Ju, she called out crisply, Second young master. The little girl had specially asked her to serve Yin so that he could stay in the courtyard. After Yin left, he was busy with Su Jingfu's matters and forgot about Bai Guo. He didn't expect Bai Guo to still be in the courtyard. It was already late. He would ask Bai Rongwei to arrange for her to stay in another courtyard tomorrow morning. He didn't like other people in the courtyard. Xiao Ju entered the house. Fei knew when to get the carriage. Not long after they sat in the house, someone knocked on the door. Xiao Ju said, Come in. Wanning walked in from outside. How are the two people in the village? Xiao Ju asked. The doctor has already seen them. Their lives are not in danger for the time being. Qi Wu is still being interrogated. The two people have some misgivings and have reservations in their words. Young master, please give them a few more days. When the two people are willing to open their mouths and present evidence, Prime Minister Su will not be able to make a comeback. 3 days. Xiao Ju said, at most 3 days. If there is no result in 3 days, I will interrogate them myself. Luaning nodded. After a while, she said, Young master, in addition to this, when I was investigating today, I found out something else. Speak. The military general He family is investigating us. Xiao Ju paused. She looked up at him. He Ru Fei? Wanting nodded. It should be. He Yuansheng and He Yuanliang's connections and methods in the imperial court are not as good as his. His movements are very secretive and careful. Maybe he was a little impatient and exposed himself. Did he find out anything about the rumors that were spreading in the market? No, young master. Wan Ying's expression was very serious. Moreover, if it was only about the rumors, he didn't need to investigate Miss He's background. Xiao Ju's eyes suddenly sharpened. Yin? That's right. Wan Ying said, he is not only investigating young master, but also Miss He. Xiao Ju's face darkened. Because of his relationship with Su Jingfu, if Su Jingfu's people wanted to deal with him, they would target He Yin. After all, He Yin did not have any family background. Even if he had the title of Marquis, Wuan, he had not formed his own connections in the imperial court. His foundation was too shallow, and it was easy for him to be uprooted. But if he Rufei wanted to target He Yin, then it would be a big mistake. Young master, there's one more thing. Wan Ying's expression was somewhat hesitant. as if she did not know whether to say it or not. She rarely had this kind of time, so Xiao Ju asked, "What is it?" Wanting thought for a moment, and after a long while, she made up her mind and said, "Hamlin scholar Su family is also investigating Miss He." Su family? Xiao Ju frowned. If He Rufei was investigating Xiao Ju because of his relationship with Su Jingfu, or because he had previously ordered people to spread rumors about him in the market, and thus implicated He Yin, then the Su family was not involved. At this time, they also interfered, which was very thought-provoking. Only investigating He Yin? Only investigating He Yin. Since they were only investigating He Yin, it had nothing to do with the Xiao family. Then the question was, what kind of relationship did He Yin have with the Su family in the past that made the Su family act so rashly? After a long while, Xiao Ju said, "Continue with your work, but after today, investigate the Su family as well." There were some things that were not right that had been overlooked. For example, the second Madam He that they met at Yuhua Temple today, her behavior was also strange. There must be something fishy between the Su family and the He family. Chapter 208. At night, all the servants were asleep, but the hall of the He family was still brightly lit. Madam He stood in the middle of the room. Beside her was her maid, Cui Er, who came up the mountain with her today. He Yuan Liang and He Yuanxing sat on both sides. He Rufei sat on a chair beside them. She glanced at Madam He with a heavy gaze. No one knew what she was thinking. "Second aunt, what did you say to Xiao Huaijin in Yuhua Temple today?" After a long while, He Rufei said, "Now that Xiao Huaijin has returned to the capital, the situation in the capital has been disrupted again. At this time, every step is very important. Xiao family and our He family are not the same kind of people." "I didn't say anything," Madam He said softly. Her eyes were calm. "I just took a look at his fiancée." Xiao Ju's fiancée was He Yin, the name that no one in the He family was willing to mention. It always reminded them of the bad things in the past. He Rufei smiled. "Second aunt, what are you doing? My cousin has passed away. Even if they have the same name, you don't think that He Yin is your dead daughter, do you?" "I told you before." He Yuan Liang had already put away his usual smile. His face was very ugly. "Don't mention He Yin again. He Yin is dead. It's all in the past. Do you want to kill our whole family?" Cui Er knelt on the ground and trembled. She had been bought over by Madam He. She had to report to Madam He about everything that Madam He did when she was in the house, let alone when she went out. This time it was the same. She didn't have the chance to eat vegetarian food with Madam He. She only saw Madam He talking with Xiao Ju from afar. When she returned to the house, she couldn't wait to tell Madam He about it. She wanted to be rewarded. But now, Cui Er regretted that the He family didn't hide these secrets from her. It was not because they trusted her, but because it was useless for a dead person to know the secrets. She had no chance to reveal the secret. She's already dead. Second Madam, He looked at him with a trace of anger in her eyes. She can't harm the He family. It's the He family who harmed her. What do you mean? Madam He's face turned cold, and her tone was very dissatisfied. Are you resenting us now? You knew it when I made the decision. Moreover, this is for the sake of the entire He clan. What do you mean by for the whole He family? Second Madam, He sneered. When I made the decision, did I have the right to choose? She didn't die for the entire He clan. She died for your greed. You killed my daughter, but you don't feel the slightest bit of remorse. She's already dead. I just want to see my daughter again. Even if they have the same name, even if I know it's impossible, I still want to see my daughter. By the end of his speech, he was already hysterical. Second brother, He Yuansheng frowned slightly. Is this how you discipline your wife? He Yuan Liang said angrily. She's a lunatic. I've already said it's a disaster to keep her alive. Kill me. Second Madam, he smiled bitterly, and her eyes were filled with despair and madness. If you kill me, you won't be afraid that the secret will be known. If you kill me, I can go down to the ground and reunite with my daughter. I want to see from the sky how long the glory and wealth that you stole from others can last. Even if I become a ghost, I'll curse you from the ground every day. Everything you want will be in vain, and you won't have a good ending. These words sounded particularly strange at night. He Yuan Liang said angrily, "Crazy, all of you are crazy." He Rufei's eyes were cold, and he said lightly, "Second aunt, don't say that. Even if you go down to the ground, my cousin may not be willing to reunite with you. After all, you were also the one who pushed her to that road. You're not qualified to be her mother. Even if you go down to the ground, she will still resent you." Second madam, he was stunned by his words. In a moment, tears gushed out of her eyes, and she sobbed painfully. "Second aunt, don't talk about life and death. Have you forgotten how sad second sister was when you died?" Second madam, he's crying, stopped abruptly. Xining doesn't know anything. Of course I know second sister doesn't know anything. He Rufei smiled non-committally. Otherwise, she wouldn't have lived until now and married Su Jian. It's okay if second aunt doesn't want to say. I'll go to the Su family tomorrow, and second sister will tell me everything. He Rufei played with the thumb ring on his hand. But second aunt, you have to know that He Yin is already dead, and you have more than one daughter. If you want to kill your other daughter, you can do whatever you want. I won't tell anyone. Second madam, he knelt down with a plop and crawled in front of He Rufei. Don't hurt Xining. She doesn't know anything. He Rufei helped her up and smiled. Xining is so obedient and sensible. Why would I hurt her? Second aunt, you don't have to worry. It's just that second aunt's condition is getting worse, and it's not suitable for you to go out. Just announce to the public that you're seriously ill and can't get out of bed. Find a doctor to treat you. He had a pitiful expression. Second aunt, treat your illness well. After a while, all these things will be over and you'll be fine. Men, he ordered the guards outside to come in. Send second madam to the courtyard. She'll recuperate from today onwards. Don't see anyone. Second madam, he was dragged out of the hall. Arguing with He Rufei had exhausted all her strength. No one else in the room said anything. After second madam he left, He Yuanqing frowned. Is this really okay? I feel that she'll cause trouble sooner or later if we keep her. He Rufei glanced at He Yuanqing with a trace of contempt in his eyes. This man didn't have any talent in his career. He only got his position because of his relationship with He Yuanqing. Even so, the cowardice and selfishness in his bones didn't decrease at all. As for his wife and daughter, as long as it involved his interests, he wouldn't hesitate to kill them. However, he wasn't willing to make the final decision. Compared to him, He Yuanqing was much more decisive. Second uncle, don't worry. He Rufei smiled faintly. With Xining here, second aunt will know her limits. Moreover, if something happens to second aunt, it'll be more suspicious. At this juncture, it's better for the He family to be careful. If it's not for that, first madam, he asked worriedly, then what should we do now? If Xiao Huijin really knows something, won't everything we've done be in vain? When He Yin was still alive, He Rufei would still discuss the big and small matters of the He family with He Yuanqing and his wife. However, after He Yin died, the He family had already listened to He Rufei's arrangements. In the eyes of the He family, the biggest danger had completely disappeared with He Yan's death. In the future, what awaited the He family was endless glory and wealth. However, because of Xiao Huijin's involvement, the situation had changed. That safety seemed to have many loopholes now, so they couldn't be completely at ease. I'll make a trip to the Su family tomorrow. He Rufei narrowed his eyes. Second aunt has been keeping secrets for so many years. With second sister by her side, even if she finds Xiao Huijin, she won't say too much. Compared to that, I'm more worried about Su Jian. Su Jian, He Yuanqing asked. What's wrong with him? This lowly person is trash. He's as timid as a mouse. He can't do much. He Rufei spoke of Su Jian with disdain. This person always talked about how glorious he was, but unfortunately, he would immediately become timid when he encountered a problem. That day at the palace banquet, he only met someone with the same name and was so scared that he almost gave himself away. However, he didn't think about it. How could a dead person come back to life? It was obvious that someone was behind this to make them panic. He could still remain calm, but Su Jian might not. If Su Jian couldn't stand a threat and did something wrong, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, with his temperament, he would definitely reveal all the secrets he knew and implicate the entire He family. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of alerting the enemy, He Rufei would have killed Su Zhiheng more than Madame He. Because to some extent, Su Zhiheng knew no less secrets than Madame He. Even if it was to appease the army, he had to see Su Zhiheng as soon as possible. That's it. He Rufei stood up and rubbed his forehead. There were too many unexpected situations these days. He wasn't completely unaffected. When he walked to the side of the servant girl named Shui, he seemed to feel something. He lowered his head and saw that the servant girl was kneeling very low. Her body was trembling, and her white neck was exposed. She looked particularly fragile. What should we do with this girl? He Yuanliang asked. He Rufei looked at Shui with pity. Then, he walked past her expressionlessly and said, "Kill her." A woman's scream echoed in the room. The next day, He Yin went to the Su family. When he arrived, he coincidentally saw a carriage from the He family stop in front of the Su residence. He Rufei got off the carriage. The servants of the Su residence familiarly welcomed him in. He Yin stood in the corner across the street. Most of his body was hidden in the shadows. He lowered his eyes to hide the ridicule in his eyes. In the eyes of outsiders, He Rufei probably came to see his sister. Only He Yin knew that He Rufei came in a hurry today. He just saw He Xining at Yu Hua Temple yesterday. He was afraid that He Rufei came to see her today because he wanted to see her. She also understood one thing in her heart. There were spies from a He family around Madame He. It was very likely that she was no longer free. It seemed that her appearance more or less made He Rufei panic. There was no point in staying here. She turned around and walked to the tea house where she had agreed to meet Fu Wang. At the He family's residence, Su Zhiheng saw He Rufei. As if he saw his savior, he pulled him into the study and closed the door. He couldn't wait to ask, "How was it? Did you find out about that girl named He Yin? What was her background? Why did she come?" He Rufei looked at him contemptuously. "I haven't seen her for a few days. You're so scared that you don't even dare to go out? You don't know. You don't know." Su Zhiheng had a headache. That day, when you didn't talk to Marquis, Wu, and her demeanor and actions were very similar to He Yin. Moreover, I always felt that her eyes weren't that simple. Even if the dead can't be resurrected in this world, she must know something. She's coming for us. He Rufei sat down on a chair in the room and said neither quickly nor slowly, "Even if she's coming for us, it's not impossible." "What do you mean?" Su Zhiheng asked. "Didn't you doubt whether she's really He Yin?" He Rufei said, "Then kill her again. It doesn't matter if she's real or not. As long as she's dead, it's fine." "How is that possible?" Su Zhiheng was shocked. "She's Xiao Huaijin's fiancée now. How would we dare to touch Xiao Huaijin's people?" Su Zhiheng didn't have any connections with Su Xiang. For the Su family, it was natural to not have any conflicts with Xiao Ju if they could. They would not have any conflicts with Xiao Ju. He Rufei couldn't tell Su Zhiheng that Xiao Ju had already targeted the He family because of Su Xiang. Otherwise, with Su Zhiheng's cowardice, who was as timid as a mouse, he might tell Xiao Ju and try to get a chance to live. He Rufei said, "My people have already investigated. The He family once had an enemy in Shuajing. Although this matter has already been settled, and now, because of Xiao Huaijin, no one will take the initiative to mention it. However, one of their sons died, so they might have some resentment in their hearts. I'm guessing that the death of the Fan family's young master is more or less related to He Yin. If someone killed He Yin," he smiled slightly. "The Fan family's people seeking revenge is really a natural reason." Su Zhiheng was a little moved, but he still had some concerns. "If you do this, Xiao Huaijin might find out. That's General Feng Yun. I'm also General Fei Hong." He Rufei suddenly shouted. Su Zhiheng was shocked, but he saw that the man in front of him had an extremely gloomy gaze. It seemed his words just now had touched He Rufei's sore spot. He reacted. "That's not what I meant. Forget it." He Rufei waved his hand impatiently. "I'll arrange this matter. You just need to know, during this time, don't do anything stupid and cause trouble for me. I didn't come here just for you today. Where's Xining? Why are you looking for Madam? Yesterday, she and her mother went up the mountain to worship Buddha. On the way, they met Xiao Huijin and Hien. I don't know what they talked about, He Rufei said. As soon as he said this, Su Zhiheng immediately became nervous. I'll find her immediately. He Xining was drying books in the courtyard. When she heard that He Rufei had come and took the initiative to call her over, her first thought was not happiness, but nervousness. Xiao Lu asked her, Madam, why do you look so pale? He Xining took out a mirror and saw that her lips were pale. She asked Xiao Lu to bring some lipstick to her lips and took a deep breath. Then, she put on a smile and walked towards Su Zhiheng's study. When she reached the study, He Xining called out, Husband, Big Brother. Su Zhiheng hurriedly asked her to sit down. Big Brother passed by your residence today, so he came to see you. Su Zhiheng smiled. Big Brother is very concerned about you. He Xining obediently thanked him. I heard that you and Second Aunt went to Yuhua Temple to worship Buddha yesterday. He Rufei looked at He Xining and smiled. Second Aunt's health has not been good recently. It's good to worship Buddha. He Xining nodded. Yes, I saw that Mother's complexion was not good. I was also very worried. Father has already invited a famous doctor to the residence to nurse Second Aunt's body. You're just too worried. He Rufei comforted. Then, he changed the topic and asked casually, I heard that the two of you also met General Feng Yun and his fiancée at the temple yesterday. He Xining's heart tightened, but she did not show it on her face. She revealed a surprised expression. I didn't expect Big Brother to also hear about it. When Mother and I saw the two of them, we were quite surprised. We didn't expect that such a cold and indifferent person like General Feng Yun would actually believe in Buddha. Believing in Buddha has nothing to do with this. He Rufei picked up the teacup and took a sip. He smiled and said, What did you talk about? He did not ask, Did you talk? But what did you talk about? It seemed that their every move in the temple had been known. He Xining was even more nervous. She did not know what happened to her mother when she returned to the He family last night. Looking at He Rufei's appearance, he seemed to know everything. But He Xining was not completely stupid. She sighed and looked a little sad. Big Brother also knows that after Big Sister died, although Mother did not say it on the surface, she was very sad in her heart. I heard that Military Governor Zhao's fiancée had the same name as Big Sister, so I wanted to go and see her. Mother only asked, You're Hien? I was afraid that I would offend Military Governor Xiao, so I did not wait for her to continue. I apologized to Military Governor Xiao and Miss He and pulled her away. He Rufei also sighed when he heard this, but the look in her eyes still made He Xining's back feel cold. He stared at He Xining and suddenly asked, Then, is that Marquis Wen really that similar to your big sister? Su Zhiheng looked at He Xining. He Xining's palms gradually exuded beads of sweat. She was stunned for a moment. Then she suddenly laughed and said, Big Brother, why are you also like this? It's broad daylight. Can you not say such scary things? Even though I don't have much contact with Big Sister, but from what I see, that Marquis Wen and Big Sister are not the least bit similar. Big Sister is well-behaved and polite, but Marquis Wen has a lively temperament. When she was talking to Military Governor Xiao, she was not the least bit afraid. If it were Big Sister, she would definitely not be like this. He Rufei stared at her, as if trying to discern whether she was telling the truth or not. Just when He Xining felt that her smile was somewhat stiff, He Rufei looked away and said, That's true. He Xining breathed a sigh of relief when the oppressive pressure was suddenly lifted. I still have other things to do. Since I've seen you, I should go. He Rufei stood up. As if thinking of something, he turned back to look at He Xining and said, It's not peaceful outside these few days. It's best if you stay in the Fu and don't go out. He Xining hurriedly said, I know. He Rufei went out. Su Zhiheng said, I'll see Big Brother out. Then he followed him out of the study. He Xining sat alone in the room. After a long time, she slowly reached out and touched her heart. For a moment, she felt that her heart was about to stop. Even though Su Zhiheng said that He Rufei was just passing by, He Xining knew very well that he came for her for yesterday's matter. However, compared to Xiao Huijin, He Rufei's focus seemed to be more on Hien. Why? She did not dare to continue thinking about it. but she could not help but guess. He Rufei's last words seemed to be a reminder of concern, but He Xining's intuition told her that it would not be easy for her to leave the Fu in the future. Would she have to stay in this Fu, cut off from the rest of the world? He Xining could not help but shiver. If she was already like this, then her mother's situation would be even worse. What should she do? On the other side, when He Yin finished his second cup of tea, Fu Wang arrived. As soon as he came in, he went straight to He Yan's room and said, "Young master, I've been waiting for you for so long." Fu Wang had learned to be smart. He could not come here every day, or else he would be suspected by the Su family. However, if he did not come, he was afraid that he would miss He Yin. Therefore, he took some money and asked the tea house's waiter to keep an eye on him. If He Yin came, the waiter would go to the Su family's door to inform Fu Wang. Therefore, Fu Wang could come here as quickly as possible. Originally, when I knew you were here, I wanted to come. However, there was an important guest in the Fu today, so I did not dare to leave my post without permission. I could only wait for the important guest to leave before secretly coming here. He Yin knew that he was talking about He Rufei, so he did not pursue the matter. He only smiled and asked, "Since little brother is so anxious to see me, it seems that Mother Qin's matter has been settled." Fu Wang cursed in his heart. This young master was really impolite. He did not even exchange pleasantries when he came up. Instead, he talked about business like this. It was really too unreasonable. However, even though he thought this in his heart, he did not dare to say it out loud. Fu Wang smiled and said, "There's good news and bad news. Which one does young master want to hear?" "The good news. The good news is that Mother Qin is really not dead. These days, this little one has been diligently searching for her whereabouts for young master. As expected, there is a clue. Although it is not certain that we can find her, it is certain that Mother Qin is still alive. There is an 80 to 90% chance that she is at her lover's house outside the city. However, that lover is very cunning and often cannot find her. Every 3 to 5 days, she will change places. If young master trusts this little one, give this little one another 8 to 9 days. This little one will definitely be able to find Mother Qin's whereabouts." 8 to 9 days. He Yin slowly opened his mouth. That's a bit long. That's not it. Fu Wang had a long face. This little one also has to make arrangements and run all over the place. This matter is very important. Young master trusts this little one, but this little one does not trust others. This little one is afraid that this little one will accidentally mess things up. Naturally, this little one cannot be careless and do things half-heartedly. He Yin smiled and took out an ingot of silver from his bosom. He placed it on the table. Fu Wang immediately beamed with joy. He put the ingot of silver into his bosom and said seriously, "As long as young master needs it, this little one will do everything for young master as soon as possible, even if this little one has to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire." He did not feel like listening to his glib tongue. He only asked, "What is the bad news?" Fu Wang stared blankly for a moment, then looked around as if he was afraid that someone would overhear. Only then did he lean over and whisper, "The bad news is there are still people in the Su estate looking for Mother Qin's whereabouts." He Yan's fingers moved slightly. He said, "Su Zhiheng." Fu Wang's eyes widened. "How did you know?" He anxiously said, "That's right, it is Master Su. This little one has been asking around these past few days and discovered that Master Su had also sent people to look for Mother Qin's whereabouts. However, it was because of this that this little one was able to borrow their strength and smoothly investigate without being discovered. Young master, if you really want to find Mother Qin, you must first meet her before Master Su finds her." Chapter 209. After leaving the Su estate, He Yin went straight back to the He estate. He Sui and He Yunsheng hadn't returned yet. He Yin took out a small box from under the table. There were a few silver ingots inside. Fu Wang was greedy for money. If there wasn't a huge benefit, he wouldn't dare to take such a big risk for her. He Yan's gaze gradually became serious. Su Zhiheng was probably scared out of his wits. That's why he went to find Mother Qin so quickly. She had to find her before Su Zhiheng, so she had to bribe him. Looking at the pitiful silver ingots, he sighed. Did he really have to make another trip to Lutong village? A luxurious carriage stopped at the entrance of Sir Jinbo's estate. Servant girls escorted a young miss in. The Chu estate's servants hurriedly came out to greet her. Miss Su is here. Su Pingting held her chin high, lifted her dress, and stepped into the Chu clan's gate. When Su Jingfu occasionally came to the Chu estate to find Chu Xilan, Su Pingting would also come along. Everyone in the Chu estate knew that Su Pingting was the apple of Su Jingfu's eye. They didn't dare to slight her. Madame Chu followed them out. When she saw Su Pingting, she smiled and said, Miss Su is here. Xilan hasn't returned yet. Please sit in the main hall and drink some hot tea. You can wait for Xilan to come back. Su Pingting glanced at Madame Chu and snorted as a response. Her actions were very rude, but Madame Chu didn't get angry. She still had a smile on her face as she went out to instruct the servant girls to make some snacks. Su Pingting looked at her busy figure and smiled in satisfaction. Sure Jinbo's wife was born with an unattractive appearance. This wasn't a big deal. In the Shuo capital, there were many women without good looks. However, she had married a handsome man like Chu Linfeng. When the two were compared, it naturally became a joke. Chu Linfeng was also a man who lusted after beauties. He brought concubines into the manor one by one. He brought a total of 19 concubines into the manor, all of whom were outstanding beauties. In this way, Madame Chu looked even more pitiful. However, no one dared to look down on Madame Chu. In this manner, other than Chu Zhao, no concubine could give birth to Chu Linfeng's child. Su Pingting had also heard from Su Jingfu that Chu Zhao's position in the household was awkward. Since she was in love with Chu Zhao, she had to stand on the same side as Chu Zhao against a common enemy. Therefore, every time she came to the Chu residence, she had to make things difficult for Madame Chu, the official mother, so that she could avenge Chu Zhao. It was the same today. Madame Chu had a maid bring in snacks and tea. Chu Linfeng wasn't in the manor at this time. Madame Chu smiled and said, I haven't seen Miss Su in a while. Ever since His Majesty granted the marriage, I've been very happy to hear that Miss Su is going to marry our Xilan. In the Shuo capital, only Miss Su is worthy of Xilan's attention. Who didn't like to hear compliments, especially compliments about Chu Xilan's love for her? Su Pingting was a little proud when she heard that. She said, of course, no other woman is worthy of Brother Xilan. Madame Chu smiled and took a sip of tea. Her gaze landed on the maid behind Su Pingting and Mo Tai. Su Pingting noticed her gaze and said unhappily, Why are you looking at my maid? I'm looking at how pretty Miss Su's personal maid is. Madame Chu gently stroked her hair and said unhurriedly, After you and Xilan get married, Xiang, who is by Xilan's side, is also not bad. When you walk out, you will be a family of beauties. It would have been better if she hadn't mentioned this. As soon as she mentioned Xiang's beautiful face immediately appeared in Su Pingting's eyes. Mo Tai's looks were not bad, but compared to Xiang, it was far worse. Not to mention Mo Tai, there were countless girls in the Shuo capital, but there were only a few who could compare to Xiang. Speaking of which, Su Pingting suddenly realized that she had been seeing Chu Zhao these days, but she hadn't seen Xiang. Where's that girl now? Su Pingting asked. Xilan said that she doesn't need to serve him. She could just do some light work in the courtyard. Madame Chu smiled and said, Miss Su, you know that Xilan has a gentle personality and is kind at heart. He's always very kind to girls. Xiang is his maid who grew up with him. She's more special than the other servants. And Mo Tai couldn't help but say, no matter how special she is, she's still just a servant. Su Pingting clenched her fists and her nails dug into her palms. Her expression was ugly. Xiang was a thorn in her heart. With such a vixen by Chu Zhao's side, how could she be at ease? If it weren't for Chu Zhao's protection, Xiang would have died 1,000 times over. When she was young, she once joked that she wanted to sell Xiang. Chu Xilan, who had always been obedient to Su Pingting, ignored her for half a month for the first time. At that time, Su Pingting understood that Chu Zhao wanted to protect Xiang. If she used the same method to deal with Ying Xiang that year when she was interested in Chu Zhao would never forgive her. Su Pingding didn't want Chu Zhao and her to be estranged. She also didn't want Chu Zhao to think that she was a vicious woman. He had endured this for many years. However, she did not have an engagement with Chu Zhao. Could it be that in the future, when she became Chu Zhao's wife, she would have to tolerate a vixen hanging around under her nose every day? Madame Chu took in Su Pingting's expression and sighed. Miss Su is still young and hasn't been the head of the household. However, once you get married, your life will be completely different from when you were a young lady. You see, there are a total of 19 concubines in the Chu estate. All of them treat me with respect. It doesn't seem bad. Do you really think I don't have any grudges? A woman can be jealous and throw a tantrum before she gets married. But if she's still like this after she gets married, others will say that she's jealous and impolite. Su Pingting was furious. Who dares to say that I'm jealous? Even if they don't say it, they still think so. Madame Chu said with a smile, therefore, if Miss Su has someone she doesn't like, you must send that person away before you get married. Otherwise, it'll be a small matter if they stay in the estate and affect your relationship as a married couple. You're still young. It won't be good if you hurt your relationship. Madame Chu's words were full of concern, and her face was full of smiles. Su Pingting knew that Madame Chu was trying to drive a wedge between them. However, what Madame Chu said was what she cared about the most. Keeping Ying Xiang was like leaving a thorn in her heart. If she didn't remove this thorn, she wouldn't be happy for the rest of her life. What if the person I want to get rid of is protected by someone else? Su Pingting asked. Chu Linfeng found 19 beautiful concubines. Among them, no matter how smart or stupid they were, none of them could compete with this average-looking woman in front of her. To be honest, Su Pingting quite admired Madame Chu. If she didn't have some tricks up her sleeve, how could she control the Chu estate? That's easy, Madame Chu said. I heard that the Prime Minister was the Crown Prince's teacher. The Crown Prince lacks smart and considerate people. If Your Highness the Crown Prince asks for it, who would dare to refuse? Su Pingting's eyes lit up. She had forgotten that she couldn't do anything to Ying Xiang, but the Crown Prince could. How could Chu Zhao refuse the Crown Prince? For a moment, Su Pingting was overwhelmed with emotions. Even Chu Zhao didn't want to wait. He stood up, glanced at Madame Chu, and smiled for the first time today. Thank you, Madame Chu. I still have something to do today. I'll come another day. He hurriedly left with his maid. After Su Pingting left, the smile on Madame Chu's face faded. The servant next to her whispered, Madam, if the Crown Prince really wants Ying Xiang, there's nothing the fourth young master can do. Chu Xiaolin has always been wise to protect himself. No matter how much he loves that girl, he won't destroy his future for a lowly servant. I never thought that he would go against Crown Prince. Then, Madame Chu picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip. After a while, she said, it was Su Pingting's idea for Ying Xiang to be taken away by the Crown Prince. I will naturally let Chu Xiaolin know about this. That lowly bastard is very vengeful. He doesn't show it on his face, but he's probably very angry inside. I want him to fight with the Su family. You also know, Madame Chu sneered. If he fights with the Su family, the only result is death. I'll wait for the day he dies. Ian didn't know anything about what happened in the Chu family. She hadn't seen Chu Zhao since the celebration banquet. She thought that he was probably busy with his marriage with Su Pingting. After all, the Su family valued this daughter very much. That day, Ian went to pick up He Yunsheng from school in the evening. It was early winter in the capital, so the sky got dark early. There weren't as many people on the streets as usual. Other than the hawkers who sold hot soup, people still prefer to stay in warm houses. A group of young men walked out of Helu Academy. He Yunsheng was surrounded in the middle. The situation was completely different from the last time He Yin came. Yunsheng, in the future, your brother-in-law will be the famous General Fengyan. You're still the best. How can this be called Yunsheng's best? This is called Yunsheng's sister's best. Can your sister do this? She can't do it. He Yin listened by the wall and felt that something was wrong. Why did it sound like they were scolding her? Now in the academy, He Yunsheng had changed from being ignored by everyone to someone who wanted to get close to him. It was just that he had a sister who was a marquis and a brother-in-law who was a general of the clouds. There were even shameless people who wanted to go to his house as a guest. Bah, he didn't even know that person. It wasn't easy to get rid of this group of sticky candy. He Yunsheng carried a cloth bag and walked home. Someone patted him on the back. When he turned around, He reached out and rubbed his head. "Why are you walking so fast? Are you in competition?" He Yunsheng was stunned and looked around. "Why are you here?" "I dealt with some business today," He Yin said seriously. "I passed by your academy on the way home. I was waiting for you to go back together. Don't come to the academy to find me in the future." He Yunsheng walked forward in a bad mood. "I don't know what these lunatics will do when they see you." He Yin smiled, and guess what happened to this young man? He said, "I know. Our Yunsheng doesn't like to be in the limelight. I won't come to find you next time. Sigh, I think Dad will be home soon. Qing Mei will cook porridge tonight. Let's buy a few mutton buns to eat." "You only know how to eat," He Yunsheng complained, but he obediently followed He Yin to buy some buns. The mutton buns on the streets of Shuajing had thin skin and large fillings. They were not expensive. The hot buns were packed in oil paper bags and held in their arms. They were warm. He Yin carried the paper bags and walked home with He Yunsheng. He turned into an alley and took out a bun for He Yunsheng. "Are you hungry? Do you want to eat one to fill your stomach first?" He Yunsheng refused. "No. Do you want to grow up to be Tang Yuan from the Wang family next door?" Tang Yuan was a pig raised by the Wang family next door. It was also the fattest pig on the street. When it walked, it could only see a round and white ball. Therefore, even though it was a huge monster, it had a cute name, Tang Yuan. Ian looked him up and down and took a bite himself. "You're so young, but you already know how to care about your appearance. I told you, you're at the age where you're growing. If you don't eat more, how can you grow taller? It's fine if you lose weight after you gain weight. Anyway, you won't look bad in the future." He didn't know what kind of nonsense she was talking about, but He Yin was angry. He was about to teach her not to speak so casually in the future, but he saw He Yin suddenly frown and quickly pull him behind her. He didn't have time to ask what happened, but the half bun in He Yin's hand was already thrown out, accurately hitting a shadow on the wall. The next moment, on all four sides of the wall, several shadows appeared out of nowhere, holding knives in their hands as they rushed towards the siblings. "Yunsheng, be careful." He Yin pushed He Yunsheng to the corner of the alley. He Yunsheng was stunned by the sudden assassination. When he turned over and sat up, he saw He Yin fighting with the group of men in black. Their target was not him. He Yunsheng shouted, "Help! Someone's killing someone." However, this street was already sparsely populated. Now that it was nighttime, there were even fewer people. Even if there were people, those who were timid did not dare to come this way. He did not bring any weapons to school. Even if he wanted to rush in to help barehanded, he was only halfway there when he was slashed by a man in black and fell to the ground. "Yunsheng." He Yin was anxious. He bent his body to avoid the blade of the man in front of him. He bent his elbow and directly hit the man's abdomen. The man was knocked back. He Yin seized the opportunity to snatch his knife and turned to the side to knock down the other people's knives. He Yin's knife skills were not bad. Although there were many people, their skills were not good. In just a moment, they fell under his knife. He Yin did not take their lives. He kicked the last person down. He Yunsheng hurriedly ran over. His eyes were full of panic. He Yin, impudent. He Yin wanted to make him feel more relaxed. He deliberately joked, "I said to call her sister." He Yunsheng did not care. He only grabbed He Yin's hand and looked up and down. "Are you hurt? What happened to you just now? Why did you push me out? Your small body is not enough to block the knife." He Yin said, "Go and get the torch on the wall. I want to ask a few questions." He Yunsheng was still a little nervous. He Yin urged him a few times before he went to the wall to get the torch. He Yin took the torch and walked to the nearest person. He squatted down in front of him. At first glance, he was stunned. She did not attack the vital parts of these people. But this person's mouth was bleeding and he was motionless. At first glance, he was dead. She took the torch and looked at the remaining people. They were all the same. What happened? He Yunsheng was very sensitive to killing people because of the Fan Chung incident. At this moment, he saw that the people lying on the ground were not breathing. He could not help but panic. Why are these bandits all dead? You clearly. They put poison in their mouths. When they were caught, they bit the poison and killed themselves. Hien stood up. Under the light of the torch, his eyes were very bright. They're not bandits. They're men of sacrifice. Men of sacrifice? Hien Sheng was stunned. Men of sacrifice? Why would they come to kill us? No, to kill you. Just now, when Hien pushed him out, those people did not take the opportunity to take his life. Instead, they kept pestering Hien. But Hien had been in Liangzhou all this time. He just returned to Shuajing not long ago. He did not have any enemies. Why would someone deliberately want to take his life? At this time, the sound of people and horse hooves came from outside. Accompanied by the light of the fire, a large group of people ran over with torches. Hien looked up and saw that it was the city guards. Thinking about it, Hiyunxing's loud shout just now had alarmed the surrounding people. Some of the smarter ones went to look for the nearby city guards. What happened? The leading soldier dismounted from his horse. When he saw the corpses on the ground, his expression immediately became serious. Hiyunxing was afraid that they would suspect Hien and himself. He hurriedly said, "Officer, when we just arrived here, these people jumped out and wanted to kill us. My sister fought with them. When these people saw that they could not beat my sister, they took medicine and killed themselves." The young man was still a bit nervous, but compared to the last time on the boat, he was much better. At least he could finish a sentence. "Sister," the soldier looked at Hien suspiciously. A woman against so many men. The men were not her match? It sounded a bit unbelievable. Hien did not panic. He only took out the official seal from his chest. Marquis Wu Hien. Hearing this, the soldier jumped in fright. He believed Hiyunxing's words by 70%. Who did not know about Marquis Wu, that beautiful woman who was conferred the title of Marquis? She was also the sweetheart of the Right Army commander. So if it's Marquis Wu, after confirming that the official seal was real, the soldier's attitude became much more respectful. Looking at the corpses on the ground, he still had some doubts. "You're saying that these people ambushed you and wanted to take your life?" Hien nodded his head. "Does Marquis Wu know who these people are?" Hien shook his head. "Since they're death soldiers, they are people who want to take my life. However, I don't have any enemies in Shuo City, so I have some doubts in my heart. Report it to the officials," she said. Hiyunsheng raised his head. "This matter is not something that I can solve alone. There are actually people who dare to attack an official of the imperial court. If the one ambushed today was not me, but a weak civilian, what would happen? Maybe the Shuo city defense is not enough, which is why they are so careless." The woman was usually very polite. However, when she kept her smile, she seemed a bit cold. "In my opinion, let's leave this matter to the officials. What do you think, sir?" The soldier wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and smiled. Of course. Chapter 210. While the coroner was examining the body, Hisui rushed over to the Yaman's main hall as soon as he heard the news. He rushed over as soon as he saw Hien. He grabbed Hien and looked at him from head to toe. Yin, are you okay? Are you hurt? Why are your clothes torn? Did they hurt you?" Hiyunxing stood at the side and said coldly, "Those who hurt her are all dead. Father, why are you so worried?" Hisui saw Hiyunxing standing at the side with a nonchalant look on his face. He slapped him on the back and scolded, "Why did you ask your sister to bring you home for no reason? Don't you know that your sister is a girl? What if something happens to her? Is this how you protect your sister?" The Yaman officer standing at the side, Hien said, "Father, I'm fine. Those people were not after Yinsheng. They were after me. Moreover, I can protect myself. Yinsheng, on the other hand, should be more careful when going to and from school. It's better for me to pick her up." Yinsheng snorted. "You should take care of yourself." He was still a little angry at Hisui's biased actions, although he did not really care. At this time, someone came in from outside. It was Xiao Ju. He had rushed back directly from outside and looked travel-worn. As soon as he entered, he brought with him the chill of early winter. Xiao Ju walked in and asked Yin what happened. Yin shrugged. "I was picking up Yinsheng from school, and encountered assassins on the way home. However, these assassins seemed to be suicide soldiers. I did not kill them. They all took poison and committed suicide. The coroner is examining the bodies now. I don't know what exactly happened. Suicide soldiers. Xiao Ju frowned slightly. The first thing he thought of was Su Jingfu's people. However, Su Jingfu's people would not be so stupid. If Ian really died, this marriage would be annulled. Xiao Ju could also find another noble lady with a good family background. This way, their plans would all fail. Even if it was for their own interests, Su Jingfu would not kill He Yan at this time. Su Jingfu's people were the same. Were they He Yan's enemies? The Yamen officer wiped the sweat off his forehead. Marquis Wuan alone was difficult enough. Now, General Feng Yin personally came to inquire about this matter. If this matter was not investigated clearly, everyone's job would be lost. Are you injured? Xiao Ju asked again. Ian opened his arms and turned in a circle to show him that he was unharmed. Don't worry. In any case, I'm a #1 Liangzhou guards. These people are not enough for me to fight. Xiao Ju saw that he was alive and kicking and felt slightly relieved. When Fei Nu received the news, he was with Lin Shuanghe to see the two dying brothers that day. When he received the news, he immediately rushed over. Shuajing could not be compared to the Liangzhou guards. If the Liangzhou guards could kill a person, it would be the harsh climate, the harsh environment, and the cruel and domineering Yudo. In Shuajing, there were countless ways to kill a person. He did not want Yin to be involved in unrelated quarrels because of his relationship with him. However, this assassination attempt was extremely strange to begin with. Emperor Wenxian had just bestowed the marriage, and he acted as if he could not wait. This was not Su Jingfu style at all. The coroner walked over while wiping his hands. He first saluted He Yin and Xiao Ju before saying, there were a total of 7 people who died. They had wax pills in their mouths. The wax pills were sealed with a strong poison. They died upon entering the mouth. These people did not have any fatal wounds on their bodies. They took poison to commit suicide. Taking poison to commit suicide proved that their deaths had nothing to do with He Yin. He Yin was not the one who killed them. This also proved that these people came prepared. They were indeed death soldiers. Who were the other party? He Yunsheng could not help but ask, why would they want my sister's life? Another Yamen officer stepped forward and said, we checked the bodies of these assassins. We found a banknote on one of the assassins. He handed the banknote to Xiao Ju. It is the banknote number of Jinyu Bank. This banknote was very clean. It was almost brand new and was well preserved. We plan to take this banknote to Jinyu Bank. As long as they check the account books of Jinyu Bank these days, they would probably know who exchanged the banknote and made it appear on the assassin's body. However, Ian frowned slightly. This was a bit too smooth. Since these death warriors could seal the wax pellets so well, it meant that they didn't care about life and death. How could they store a banknote so well in their bosoms? It was as if they were deliberately showing it to them. Ian cupped his hands and said, sorry to trouble you. The Yamen officers repeatedly said that they did not dare. General Fengyun's father-in-law, Marquis Wu Yan's father. They did not dare to neglect him. Ian raised his head and saw that Xiao Ju was still frowning, as if he was in an extremely bad mood. He tugged at his sleeve and said in a low voice, Commander-in-Chief, I think we should go back first and wait for news. Let the Yamen officers solve the case. You and I have to pay attention these days. Since they can make a move on her, it might mean that Xiao Ju was also in danger. Xiao Ju looked down at her, thought for a moment, and said, since they came for you, you should stay at home for the next few days. Don't go out. How can I do that? Ian flatly refused. Yinsheng needs to go to school. I don't feel at ease with him alone. There's also my father. I'm afraid that those assassins will target them. The two of them are not as good as me. If they encounter those assassins, they won't be able to protect themselves. Don't worry, Xiao Ju said. I'll send someone to secretly follow and protect them. After a pause, he continued, Xiao family too. I'll let Chi Wu follow you. Ian shook his head quickly. No need, no need. Chi Wu is not as good as me. He can't help much. I alone am enough. Besides, Those people won't dare to be too presumptuous in broad daylight. They didn't succeed this time, so I don't think they will act rashly for the time being. After this, she still had to go to the Su family to gather information and find Mother Qin's whereabouts. It was really inconvenient for her to follow Qi Wu. It was tantamount to planting a spy around her. Moreover, it was the kind of spy who would turn around and tell Xiao Ju. If Xiao Ju knew about her strange behavior in private, he wouldn't even know how to explain. But this time, Xiao Ju was unusually firm. No, you can't be alone. If you don't want him to follow you, you can live with the Xiao family. Hien, didn't you say that you want to protect my reputation? Xiao Ju said coldly. Compared to your reputation, I'm more worried about your safety. He didn't know why, but he always felt that it was unnecessary for him and he swayed to appear here. Hien thought for a moment and made a choice between the two options. In the end, he said, all right, then let Qi Wu follow me. If she was in the Xiao family, she was afraid that she wouldn't even be able to leave the house. In the He family, although Qi Wu was there, she could just sneak out and get rid of Qi Wu. Although it would take a lot of effort, it wasn't completely impossible. Xiao Ju finally gave up, because it was getting late and today's incident happened suddenly. After talking to the officials, Xiao Ju sent them back to the He family. She left Qi Wu and a few bodyguards behind before she left. After Xiao Ju left, Hien washed up and went back to his room. Qing Mei cooked porridge, but no one was in the mood to eat today, so they went to bed early. Qi Wu and a few bodyguards were keeping watch at night, so Hien didn't have to worry too much. After he got on the bed, he looked at the canopy and his heart was filled with thoughts. Actually, when those assassins committed suicide by swallowing medicine, Hien already had a suspect in his heart after finding out that they were death warriors. He was afraid that the person behind the scenes was either He Rufei or Su Jiang. Her appearance at the celebration banquet must have scared Su Jiang out of his wits and also made He Rufei suspicious. Perhaps they wanted to test her background, or perhaps they wanted to go all the way and kill her. Other than these two people, Hien couldn't think of any other enemies. However, she didn't expect that these two people would be so bold and dare to make a move in broad daylight. Were they sure that she didn't know the whole story, so they were so bold? However, He Rufei and Su Jiang didn't know that she was Hien and knew the whole truth. This move allowed her to figure out their background. She was afraid that He Rufei and Su Jiang weren't as calm as they seemed on the surface. Or perhaps they didn't clean up their tails, so they couldn't wait to kill her to silence her. Hien turned over and slowly closed his eyes. He Rufei was ruthless, and Su Jiang was cowardly. These two people didn't get along well with each other. They both had their own selfish motives and had something on each other. If they could quietly get rid of the other party, it might be a good thing for them. Relationships that were tied together because of benefits were fragile and unreliable to begin with. There is no difference between being a snipe and being a clam. The important thing was that the fisherman could sit back and reap the benefits of the fight between the two. She didn't know if it was because of her relationship with Marquis Wu or because of Xiao Ju, but the Yamen acted very quickly. In less than 2 days, Hien was notified to go to the Yamen that the mastermind behind the assassination had been found. He Sui and He Yinsheng weren't at home at this time, so Hien went out by herself. Qi Wu followed her all the way to the Yamen. When they arrived, they bumped into Xiao Ju, who was getting off the carriage and walking inside. "Governor, why are you here?" Hien asked curiously. "They also informed you?" Xiao Ju nodded. Hien didn't say anything else. She only thought that the people in the Yamen were really lackeys. She was clearly the victim, but they went ahead of her and informed Xiao Ju. When they walked in, Official Liu, who was in charge of the case, invited them to sit down in the hall and ordered his subordinates to serve them tea. "Official Liu," Hien went straight to the point, "have you found the mastermind behind the assassination?" The bailiffs went to Jinyu Bank and checked their account book. They found that the banknote was exchanged from the Fan family 5 days ago. Official Liu looked at Hien and hesitated for a moment. He seemed to be very conflicted. In the end, he had to ask, "Does Missy still remember the Fan family in the capital?" After saying this, he quickly glanced at Hien. If he had a choice, he really didn't want to take this case. This case was a tricky one no matter how he looked at it. If he wasn't careful and didn't satisfy these two people, his official career might come to an end. Especially now that the mastermind behind the assassination had been found, he felt a headache. The relationship between the Fan family and He Yin was unclear. If he asked Xiao Ju this question in front of Xiao Ju, what if she felt uncomfortable and took it out on him? Fan family? He Yin was open and magnanimous. There wasn't the slightest bit of bashfulness. Fan Sheng. Official Lu sighed in his heart. She really was a heroine. No wonder she could subdue the cold-blooded and heartless Governor Jade-Faced. He smiled and said, "That's right. You're saying that the Fan family was the mastermind behind the assassination?" Ian asked, "Why did they do this?" Official Lu said, "After we found out that the banknote was exchanged from the Fan family, we went to the Fan family. In Lady Fan's room, we found a poison that was exactly the same as the one in the assassin's wax pills. Lady Fan's personal maidservant told us the truth. She said about a year and a half ago, Lady Fan's only son, Fan Sheng, was killed on a boat on the Chunlai River. The assassin's whereabouts were unknown. At the time, Missy was also on the boat, but no one knew where she went. Everyone thought that Missy was killed by the assassin. Now that Missy has returned to the capital safe and sound, Lady Fan believed that Missy was the assassin and that Missy was the one who killed Fan Sheng. Harboring a grudge, she secretly hired assassins in an attempt to take Missy's life. What did the assassin say? The one who asked was Xiao Ju. Lady Fan refused to admit that she was the one who hired the assassin. She is now in prison and is still being interrogated. However, in this official's opinion, there are witnesses and evidence in this case. There shouldn't be any other possibility. Where is that maidservant right now? Official Lu sighed. After Lady Fan's maidservant told us the truth, Lady Fan started arguing with her. Before our men could pull them apart, that maidservant took a knife and stabbed herself in the heart, committing suicide. We don't know if she was afraid of the Fan family's revenge, or if she simply committed suicide to escape punishment. In other words, there is no one else who can prove Lady Fan's innocence? He asked. Official Lu looked at He Yin. Miss He, this official knows that you have a good heart and don't want to wrongly accuse others. However, this matter is already a clear fact. In fact, in order to avoid arresting the wrong person, the magistrate's officers also investigated many things. For example, during the days when you went to enlist in the army, the Fan family continuously made things difficult for your father and brother. The reason why your father lost his position as a military officer was because the Fan family played some tricks. The Fan family has long blamed Fan Cheng's matter on you. Now that you have returned safe and sound, the Fan family doesn't dare to take revenge in the open, so they secretly take action. You don't have any enemies in Shuajing City. Other than the Fan family, there is no reason for them to take revenge on you. He deliberately ignored the possibility that He Yin was implicated because of Xiao Ju. After all, he was just a small person and didn't dare to participate in the battle between Xiao Ju and Prime Minister Su. Ian looked at Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju said, "I want to see someone." Official Lu was stunned. Military Governor Xiao, Fan Cheng's mother. Official Lu could still fulfill this request. When He Yin and Xiao Ju arrived at the prison, they saw Lady Fan sitting in the innermost part of the prison. She was hugging her knees and curling up into a ball. Once someone approached her, she couldn't help but tremble and mumble something under her breath. He Yin frowned when he saw this and asked, "Did you torture her?" No. Official Lu was shocked and waved his hands. "We didn't have time to interrogate her. We only arrested her yesterday afternoon. However, it is strange. When we came in yesterday, she was still fine. Her tone was extremely arrogant, and she refused to admit that she was related to the assassins. This morning, when the jailer came to check on her, there was something wrong with her. However, Official Lu didn't think much of it. We have seen this kind of thing many times. Knowing that she can't escape with evidence, she began to act crazy, thinking that she can escape." He Yin squatted down and called out to her, Lady Fan, Lady Fan." When the woman in the prison heard this, she looked at him with fear. Her hair was very messy and covered her face. Only one of her eyes could be vaguely seen, and it was filled with fear. Ian had seen Fan Sheng before, but this was the first time he had seen Lady Fan. He also knew from Qing Mei that Lady Fan wasn't a good-tempered person. Ever since Tang Ying and Fan Sheng's marriage was set, Fan Sheng and Lady He cut off all contact. When Lady He went to the door, the servants of the Fan family stood at the door, ignoring the curses of the people. Ian was so ashamed that he fell seriously ill. However, now that he saw this woman, Ian felt that there was still something suspicious about this matter. Even if a shrewish mother who spoiled her son really wanted to settle accounts with him, with Lady Fan's usual temperament, she definitely wouldn't do it secretly. Moreover, she was just a woman. How could she have come into contact with those men of sacrifice? Even if she really did hire assassins, why would she be stupid enough to put the poison in her room and not quickly destroy it? Why would her personal servant betray her master? Since she was afraid of being implicated, she simply didn't say anything. She even had the courage to die, so why would she commit suicide? Now that there was no evidence and Lady Fan was acting crazy, Ian glanced at the woman in the prison. Was she really pretending to be crazy? Official Liu looked at Hyan's actions, and his heart broke out in cold sweat. This Marquis Wen really didn't avoid taboos. In front of her own fiancé, she dared to show such concern for her former lover's mother. Even if the other party wanted her life, she was magnanimous and didn't care. However, from Fan Sheng to Xiao Ju, the He family's eldest daughter's foresight had indeed improved by leaps and bounds. Ian stood up. Let's talk outside. The few of them walked out of the prison. Miss He, Military Governor Xiao. This case, she's not the murderer. Without waiting for Official Liu to finish, Xiao Ju interrupted him. Official Liu froze for a moment, but the evidence is already complete. The so-called evidence is the evidence that the murderer wants you to see. If you continue to try the case like this, I'm afraid you'll fall into the murderer's trap, Xiao Ju said. Official Liu's heart was incomparably bitter. He just wanted to be an official peacefully and quickly close this case. It wasn't easy to have witnesses and material evidence, so the case could be closed as soon as possible. However, Xiao Ju refuted it with one sentence, so there was no end to it. However, he didn't dare to voice his complaints in front of Xiao Ju. Official Liu thought for a moment, but if it's not Lady Fan, then who could it be? The clues are cut off here. The only thing on the assassin's body that can be used to identify her is that banknote. We can start from Fan family. Xiao Ju calmly said, find out who the dead servant girl was in contact with before this. Find out who entered Fan Sheng's mother's room. Also, he paused, from tonight onwards, double the number of guards here. I think, very soon, someone will want to silence her. Hien listened with trepidation. Xiao Ju's analysis was similar to what he had in mind. No matter how much trouble Official Liu thought it would be, Xiao Ju still pointed out a way for him. After a series of assurances, he went to instruct the officials to do their work. Hien and Xiao Ju walked out side by side. For a moment, the two of them were silent. If Hien had only guessed before that He Rufei and Su Zhiheng were the culprits, now he was almost certain. The Fan family's crime was too obvious. He Rufei and the others probably thought that Hien previously had disagreements with the Fan family. Once something happened, they would definitely take advantage of the situation and accuse Lady Fan of the crime. They wouldn't investigate further. However, because of Xiao Ju's words, Official Liu was still investigating the case. In order to not make any mistakes, He Rufei and the others would take the risk to silence Lady Fan. Although this seemed to be full of loopholes, but it was their best method. What do you think? Xiao Ju suddenly asked. Hien came back to his senses and said, I think what the commander-in-chief said just now was very right. I feel that there is something wrong with this case. She saw that Xiao Ju was looking down and didn't say anything. Her heart moved, and she deliberately teased. Commander-in-chief, are you angry because of the Fan family? Previously, the one who had a dispute with Fan Sheng was the proper Lady He, not her. When she had just arrived, she had forgotten about this. Now that she thought about it, Xiao Ju was unusually silent. Could it be that she was unhappy because of this matter? This was also true. As a fiancé, to have a relationship with someone else, even in a normal family, was not acceptable. Slave Faye should have helped you investigate what happened on the spring-coming river back then. If I really had something, I wouldn't have done that, Yin said softly. Xiao Ju stopped and looked at her. The young girl's eyes were lively, like a child who had done something wrong. She was a little embarrassed, a little fawning, and a little smiling. It was impossible to tell that she had experienced a thrilling pursuit a few days ago. If it was in the past, he would probably follow Yan's words and casually tease her, but today was different. Yan, he called Yan by her name. Are you hiding something from me? Yan paused and smiled as usual. She looked up at the person in front of her and said, No. Why do you say that, Commander-in-Chief? The young man stood in the same place and looked down at her. His tone was gentle, but his gaze was as sharp as a knife. He was silent for a moment before he asked, You really don't know where those assassins came from? For a moment, Yan felt as if he had seen through everything and knew everything. However, after a moment, she said in confusion, Commander-in-Chief, what do you mean by that? If I knew where the assassins came from, I would have directly told Official Liu and let him catch them. Why are we still wasting time here? Yan's expression was relaxed, but her heart was beating very fast. She did not know if Xiao Ju had found any clues. She could not tell Xiao Ju these things. She also did not know how to explain these strange, crazy, and tragic and disgusting actions. She could not tell Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju looked at her steadily. After a while, she said lightly, It's fine. Chapter 211. In the next 2 days, Yan waited for news from the Su family's Fu Wang. Unfortunately, he didn't know if it was because Su Zhiheng was also searching for Qin Momo's whereabouts, but Fu Wang's search didn't go smoothly. At the same time, on the night that Yan and Xiao Ju met Lady Fan, there really was someone who snuck into the prison to silence them. Because of Xiao Ju's reminder, Official Liu increased the number of guards in the prison. The assassin didn't succeed, but the jailers weren't able to catch the masked assassin. Even so, Lady Fan was still crazy. Official Liu didn't dare to lightly punish her. The Fan family and the servant girl who tried to commit suicide were still being investigated, so the case was at a standstill. Yan was assassinated that day in the streets. After the city guards arrived, many citizens gathered their courage and came to watch. Yan revealed his identity, so this matter couldn't be hidden. The next day, everyone in Shuajing knew that Xiao Ju's fiancé, Marquis Wuan, had been assassinated in broad daylight. Fortunately, her skills weren't bad, and she managed to escape. For a time, the number of citizens in Shuajing who went out at night greatly decreased. They were afraid that they would encounter bandits wandering outside. Before everything was investigated, the people in Shuajing would only think that it was bandits. In the Crown Prince's residence, beautiful servant girls were playing the zither and dancing. The Crown Prince's indulgence in Guang Yan's sensual pleasures wasn't something that happened in a day or two. Although the Crown Princess was angry, she couldn't do anything. She focused all of her efforts on herself and hoped that she would give birth to a grandson soon so that the Crown Prince's position would be more stable. Unfortunately, the Crown Princess's stomach didn't live up to expectations. Ever since she entered the Crown Prince's residence, there had been no news. The Guang Yin was dissatisfied with the Crown Princess and became more and more impudent. Now, in the entire residence, there was no one who could discipline him. Today, the Crown Prince hosted a banquet and invited Prime Minister Su. Chu Zhao was also present. Ever since Imperial Father bestowed the marriage, I haven't had the chance to congratulate Zilan. The Crown Prince looked at Chu Zhao and smiled. This time, Zilan has fulfilled her wish and strengthened her marriage with Prime Minister Su. It is a wonderful thing. Congratulations. Finished speaking, he raised the wine cup in his hand to Chu Zhao. Chu Zhao hurriedly picked up the cup in front of him and repeatedly said that he didn't dare. Then, he drank the wine in the cup. Now that Xiao Huaijin has returned to the capital, Guang Yin sighed. The emissary of the Wutuo Kingdom will enter the capital in a few days. Xiao Huaijin would certainly do everything possible to obstruct the opening of the market in great way. But now that most of the people in the court are on our side, Ben Gong isn't worried. After a pause, a trace of ruthlessness flashed through the crown prince's eyes. Ben Gong is worried about Lao Si. If Xiao Huijin joins fourth brother. In the imperial court, although Guang Shui did not have as many connections as Guang Yin, and concubine Lan's family was not as powerful as Empress Zhang's, they had a natural advantage that they did not have: Emperor Wenxian's favor. Emperor Wenxuan doted on Guang Sha, and several old and smelly pieces of hard too in the imperial court also secretly supported the fourth prince's Guang Shua. The fourth prince is mediocre. You don't have to worry, Your Highness, Minister Su said with a smile. That kid is useless, but the crown prince narrowed his eyes. He's always an eyesore. Most likely, although no one in the imperial court said it explicitly, everyone was well aware that his ability and character were not as good as Guang Shua's. Even his own people thought so. Even his old fox in front of him. The crown prince's gaze swept past Minister Su, and he thought of another interesting matter. Xylan. The crown prince suddenly looked at Chu Zhao. I heard that you have a servant girl who is beautiful and clever. Is that true? Chu Zhao heard this and felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over his head. Slowly, it turned to ice. However, he did not show it on his face. He respectfully replied, That is true. If you have such a beauty, why don't I see her by your side? The crown prince asked with a smile. However, there was no smile in his eyes. Why? Of course, it was because if the crown prince saw Ying Xiang by his side, it would be impossible for her to continue staying in the Chu family. For a long time, with the crown prince's Guang Yin personality, as long as there was a beautiful woman, he would kidnap her and bring her to his fu. Ying Xiang's appearance would only bring her trouble. This girl's hands and feet are not clever, and because she is too beautiful, it is not convenient to keep her by my side. This lowly official has always had her stay in the fu and do some rough work. Hearing this, the crown prince laughed loudly. Xylan, you are wasting God's gift. You don't know how to care for women. In the future, when you marry Ping Ting, you need to change. Otherwise, Minister Su will not be happy. Su Jingfu only sat to the side and drank tea with a smile. It was as if he did not hear the crown prince's words. Chu Zhao appeared to be a loss. Since it is a waste to keep her in your fu, why not give her to me? The crown prince said nonchalantly, I lack such a clever servant girl. The Eastern Palace is not lacking in food to feed one more person. What do you think? Chu Zhao paused and raised his eyes to look at the Guangyan. The zither music in the hall had stopped at some point, and the dancing servant girls had quietly retreated. In the silence, the air was stagnant like sticky blood, and there was a nauseating feeling of suffocation. The young man's face could be considered handsome, but it was unknown whether it was because of excessive indulgence, but there were obvious dark circles under his eyes. When he looked at people, there was always a trace of ruthlessness and mania. Even though there was a smile on his face, there was a trace of contempt in his eyes as he stared at Chu Zhao. That was disdain from the bottom of his heart. It was the contempt of a superior looking at an ant. What? The crown prince said jokingly. Could it be that Xylan can't bear to part with her? Su Jingfu only looked at the teacup in front of him and did not say anything. Chu Zhao stood up and walked to the crown prince. He bowed down. How could Xylan dare? Ying Xiang was chosen by your highness to serve your highness, and it is Ying Xiang's fortune. It's just that this servant girl is clumsy, and I'm afraid she will offend your highness. Since your highness has decided, when this official returns to the fu, I will immediately send Ying Xiang over. His respectful attitude clearly pleased the crown prince. The crown prince waited for Chu Zhao to kneel for a while before he stood up and helped him up. He smiled with satisfaction. There is no need to bow. You are someone close to me. After she is sent to the fu, I will take good care of her. Chu Zhao expressed his loyalty again, and after the crown prince was greatly pleased, he returned to his seat and sat down. There was good wine and delicious food on the long table. He held his chopsticks and drank with a normal expression. It seemed that he was not affected by this matter at all, but when he stopped drinking, his gaze fell on Su Jingfu beside him. The old man's face was kind and affectionate, and he seemed to be somewhat open-minded. He looked over with a smile, just like his master's gentle smile when he became his disciple. Chu Zhao also returned a smile to Su Jingfu and raised his cup to congratulate him. If one looked carefully, one could see that the fingertips of his other hand under the table were embedded in the palm of his hand, and there were traces of blood that were neither deep nor shallow. By the time they returned to the Chu family, it was already very late. Stepping into the Fu, the smile on Chu Zhao's face disappeared completely. He was used to wearing a cultured and refined smile, even when facing the servants of the Chu family. Today, it was as if he could not bear it. As soon as he entered the Fu, his face was so ugly that it seemed like water would drip from it. The servants did not even dare to approach him. Everyone in the Chu family knew that this fourth young master was extraordinary. When he was first sent back to the Fu, everyone thought that this fourth young master would not live long. An outside wife and a lowly child born of a brothel girl would not be tolerated by Madame Chu. Before Chu Zhao met Su Jingfu, he also had a difficult time. Although he had Chu Linfeng's protection, Chu Linfeng was not a father who cared about his son. In a corner that Chu Linfeng could not see, Chu Zhao was often beaten up. However, this child was very good at enduring. He endured until good luck came. Prime Minister Su Jingfu picked him, and soon he became Prime Minister Su's favorite student. After that, Chu Zhao skyrocketed. Gradually, Madame Chu could no longer touch him. Chu Linfeng listened to his son's every word, but Chu Zhao's temperament did not change. He was very gentle to the servants of the Chu family, as always. After a long time, many of Madame Chu's servants also secretly sought refuge with Chu Zhao. Even a fool would know which master to choose from, who had a better future and was more gentle and considerate. But today, Chu Zhao's good manners and good temper seemed to have run out of patience. As soon as he walked into his courtyard, he saw the familiar lantern swaying at the door. Chu Zhao walked in, and Ying Xiang came forward to greet him. Fourth young master. He walked into the room without saying a word. Perhaps his expression was too strange today. Ying Xiang was startled and followed him in. Standing beside Chu Zhao, she asked softly, "Fourth young master, did something happen?" Chu Zhao looked up at the woman in front of him. Ying Xiang was very beautiful and charming. She was like a painting as she stood here. Her beauty was more beautiful than a flower. Her appearance was enough to enter the palace. In the Chu family, if it were not for the fact that it was inconvenient for him to do anything to her, Chu Linfeng would have already made Ying Xiang his 20th concubine. It was hard to imagine how Ying Xiang's parents, who looked so ordinary, could give birth to such a beautiful face like Ying Xiang. The first time Chu Zhao saw Ying Xiang, it was in front of the brothel. Ying Xiang's father, a gambler, was holding her wrist and bargaining with the brothel's madam to see if he could sell his daughter for a higher price. Ying Xiang's mother, a pregnant woman, just stood aside and cried silently. She did not dare to say anything. At that time, Chu Zhao was only 9 years old. He had just been with Su Jingfu, and Mrs. Chu did not dare to bully him openly. Ying Xiang looked to be the same age as him. Her clothes were very shabby, but her skin was very white. Although she did not dress up, he could see that she was a beauty. Her expression was very calm, and she did not cry or make a fuss. She just stood there. When Chu Zhao stopped across the street to look at her, the girl raised her head and looked at him. There was no expression on her face, but he seemed to be able to see her deep sadness and despair through her eyes. It was as if she had surrendered to her fate and was powerless to resist. In that moment, Chu Zhao thought of Yi Runmei. He ordered his servant to buy Ying Xiang for 2 silver coins and went back to tell Chu Linfeng that he was lacking a personal maid. Chu Linfeng thought that Chu Zhao had other thoughts. He was a romantic, so he was not angry at his son's behavior. Instead, he was very appreciative of it. From then on, Ying Xiang stayed by Chu Zhao's side. In these years, Ying Xiang did not talk much. What was different from her beautiful appearance was her quiet and obedient personality. She was also becoming more and more beautiful. Chu Zhao knew that beauty would bring disaster. The days that he could protect Ying Xiang were very limited. Ying Xiang probably noticed the pity in his eyes. Xiang was stunned. After a while, she pursed her lips and asked, "Fourth young master, does this have anything to do with me?" "I went to the Crown Prince's palace today," Chu Zhao said. "The Crown Prince knows about you." The room was silent for a moment. After a while, Xiang said calmly, "I understand." Her answer was obedient and gentle, just like when she was about to be sold by her biological father outside the brothel. She naturally accepted her fate as if she had expected it. Chu Zhao moved his lips and finally spat out 2 words. "I'm sorry." Xiang smiled. She walked to the table and poured tea for Chu Zhao as usual. The tea was simmering on the stove in advance. This way, when Chu Zhao came back, he would drink hot tea. On such a cold day, he needed to drink hot tea to warm his stomach. She handed the teacup to Chu Zhao and said softly, "I've been with fourth young master for so long. I'm satisfied. In the future, when I'm not here, please take care of yourself." Chu Zhao took the tea and didn't say anything. Xiang knelt down. "For so many years, I'm indebted to young master for taking care of me. Xiang has nothing to repay you with. Before I leave, I'll kowtow to young master." She lightly kowtowed 3 times to Chu Zhao. Each kowtow seemed to weigh more than 1,000 gold pieces. After the last kowtow, she bowed down for a long time and didn't get up. Chu Zhao didn't stop her. After a long time, Xiang stood up again and bowed to Chu Zhao. "Then I'll go back to my room to pack. Take care, young master." After she finished speaking, she was about to leave. "Xiang." Chu Zhao called her name. Xiang stopped in her tracks and turned around. A glimmer of hope suddenly appeared in her eyes. That hope was hidden, but in the night, it was brighter than the stars. Chu Zhao avoided her gaze, as if he couldn't bear to look at her. After a moment of silence, he spat out 2 words. "Take care." He didn't know about these matters in the Chu family. These days, all of her attention was focused on the Su family. Money makes the world go round. With the help of money, Fu Wang was able to find Nurse Qin's whereabouts a few days earlier than the 8 or 9 days he had previously said. When Yin received the news and went to the tea house near the Su family, Fu Wang approached him with a smile on his face, as if he had done something worthy of pride and couldn't wait to be rewarded. When Yin saw him like this, he knew that he must have made a big gain. He was also delighted and asked, "Have you found her whereabouts?" "Young master." Fu Wang was very good with words. He didn't talk about the results of the matter, but only talked about the hardships and dangers he had faced in the past few days. Then he said, "This little one has risked my life to do this for you. You can't help but feel sorry for me." Yin smiled and put the last piece of silver in her sleeve on the table. At this point, she was also a pauper. However, in front of Fu Wang, she still had to put on an act. "Little brother, if you do things for me, I will definitely give you benefits. This silver is only a small amount. If you could do more things for me in the future, the silver will never run out." When Fu Wang heard this, his eyes lit up. He had an idea. He was afraid that after completing this business, this mysterious person would disappear. Since the silver came so easily, he naturally wanted to do a long-term business. This person meant that there were other things for him to do. Fu Wang was happy. This little one has already helped young master find out Nurse Qin's whereabouts. Nurse Qin has a lover who previously lived in the Niu family village outside the city. However, this little one also found out that after Nurse Qin ran away to find this lover, they no longer lived in the Niu family village. This lover's surname is Niu, and he is a blacksmith. Blacksmith Niu has a relative who lives in a barren mountain more than 10 li away from the Niu family village. That mountain is so big that it is not easy to find a person. However, they live in a mountain and need to exchange for food and cloth. On the 10th day of every month, Blacksmith Niu will go down the mountain to the nearby market to buy food. He also helps people do some work. On the day he goes to buy food, he will put the forged ironware in a blacksmith shop called Chong Mao Blacksmith Shop to sell. If young master want to find Nurse Qin, you can first go to Chong Mao Blacksmith Shop. On the 10th day of the month, Blacksmith Niu will go down the mountain and find him. Only Blacksmith Niu knows where Nurse Qin is. Fu Wang smiled slyly. As for how to make Blacksmith Niu speak, that will depend on young master's plan. Is the information you said true? Ian asked. It is absolutely true. How could this little one dare to deceive young master? Fu Wang hurriedly said, It's just that eldest master has ordered people to investigate Nurse Qin's whereabouts. This little one went through many channels to find this place. It is not impossible for eldest master to find it. If young master is in a hurry, it would be best for you to hurry to that blacksmith shop. If eldest master gets there first, he was not really thinking for the mysterious person in front of him out of kindness. He was just afraid that the mysterious person would not be able to find Nurse Qin and disappear. In the future, he would not be able to earn money so easily for him to spend. Ian was also a little excited. She originally came to the Su family to look for evidence. She did not expect to find a living person. Now that Fu Wang had inquired so carefully, it was really a pleasant surprise. You have done well in this matter. Receiving praise, Fu Wang was overjoyed. It was as if he was looking at a steady stream of shiny silver flowing towards him. He said without thinking, It is this little one's fortune to work for young master. If young master has anything else to say, please do not hesitate to tell me. This little one is not good at other things, but my legs are a little diligent. If I can help young master, that would be great. It would have been better if he did not say this. Once he said this, Ian really thought of another matter. She hesitated for a moment before asking, Do you know if there's been anything wrong with the current Su family's young mistress recently? Young mistress? Fu Wang was stunned. He felt that the person in front of him was more and more unfathomable. Previously, he said that concubine he was his former lover. Could it be that this Su family's young mistress also had some unclear relationship with him? If that was the case, wouldn't his eldest master's head be covered in green clouds? For a moment, Fu Wang sympathized with Su Jing. Ian did not know that the servant's mind had already wandered 100,000 miles. She only asked, You don't know young Mistress Su's situation? This little one is only a gatekeeper, Fu Wang said with a smile. Young mistress's courtyard is filled with servant girls and older women. There are very few servants. If young master really wants to inquire, this little one can also run errands, but what? Ian asked. That day, not long after he bumped into Madame He and he's sheening at Yu Hua Temple, she encountered an assassin. Ian thought about it and felt that He Rufei was definitely involved. Although He Sheening did not know anything, with He Rufei's cautiousness, he might not let her go. Although he did not spend much time with his younger sister, Ian did not want anything to happen to her. However, young mistress seems to be tired these days and has not gone out much. When Madame went out, she did not take her with her. Fu Wang said. Ian's heart tightened. Madame Su did not take He Sheening with her when she went out. Originally, it was not a big deal, but after she went to Yu Hua Temple, He Sheening could not help but guess that He Sheening was under house arrest by the Su family. Fu Wang. Ian looked at the servant in front of him. I want you to do one more thing for me. Keep an eye on young Mistress Su. If something happens to young Mistress Su, or if there are any problems, please go to the tea house and find the freckled waiter and inform him. Although Fu Wang was doubtful, he still nodded. Okay. After the matter was settled, the two parted ways. Ian left first, followed by Fu Wang. When Fu Wang left, he didn't notice that in front of a silk cloth shop on the opposite side of the street, there was a figure hiding behind a pillar in front of the shop. It was only after his figure disappeared that the figure came out. It was a woman in black. At night, the door to the Xiao family study was opened and someone came in. Xiao Zhu hung the sword back on the wall and took off his outer clothes. Just as he turned around, someone knocked on the door. Come in. The person who came in was Luan Ying, dressed in black. Xiao Zhu did not look at her and walked to the table. There was a stack of letters on the table. He picked up a few and flipped through them. Luan Ying said, The matter that young master asked this subordinate to inquire about, there are already some clues. The young man was taking out a piece of paper. Hearing this, he did not raise his head and only said, How is it? Luan Ying was somewhat hesitant. Xiao Zhu's hands paused, and he glanced at her. It was this glance that made Luan Ying make up her mind. She said in a low voice, This subordinate has been waiting at the Su family's door for 3 days. Today, Missy came. The room was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. Miss He and the Su family's doorman sat in a nearby tea house for an hour before leaving. This subordinate asked the tea house's waiter. Before this, they had already met several times. Xiao Ju threw the letter in his hand on the table and sat down on the chair. He looked at her and said, "What did you find?" The doorman is called Fu Wang. Recently, he has a lot of money in his hands and is looking for someone called Qin Mama in the Su family. Qin Mama was the wet nurse of He Wanru, Su Zhiheng's favorite concubine, but after He Wanru died of illness, Qin Mama disappeared. This subordinate guesses that Miss He gave Fu Wang a sum of money and asked Fu Wang to inquire about Qin Mama's whereabouts. But the strange thing is that the Su family's eldest son, Su Zhiheng, is also looking for Qin Mama everywhere. After Luaning finished speaking, she did not dare to look at Xiao Ju's expression. He Yin unexpectedly had an unclear relationship with the Su family. For Xiao Ju, this was definitely not good news. A woman with many secrets always made people suspicious. This person called Qin Mama seems to be very important. The young man played with the paperweight in his hand, under the shadow of the oil lamp. His expression could not be seen clearly. "Have you found Qin Mama's whereabouts?" Wanting nodded, "I have." Chapter 2:12. The winter in Shuajing was getting colder by the day. It rained at night, and the next morning, the ground was covered in a layer of damp coldness. On the 10th day of the 10th month, He Yin got up early. He Sui and He Yunsheng left before the sun rose. One of them had to go to work, and the other had to go to school. He Yin got up after they left and lit a candle. He quietly finished washing up and tiptoed out the door. Qing Mei was sleeping soundly, and it was not yet time to wake up to cook. He Yin knew that Qi Wu was staying in an empty room in the courtyard. He was keeping watch in the first half of the night and resting in the second half of the night. However, this person was very quick-witted and was afraid of being discovered. He Yin used the skills he learned from his previous life in the vanguard and walked the short distance from the courtyard to the outside. Xiang Xiang looked at her as if he did not understand her actions. He Yin rubbed the horse's head. He Yinsheng really loved this horse and specially bought a saddle for it. However, he was reluctant to ride it, and the saddle was new. However, she was going out of the city today, and she was so poor that she did not have the money to rent a carriage. She could only ask Xiang Xiang to give her a ride. He Yin mounted the horse and galloped out of the city under the hazy light of the winter morning. When the rooster crowed for the third time, Qing Mei yawned and got up to boil water. The water stove was placed outside the courtyard, and the kettle gurgled with steam. It gave off a bit of warmth in the cold morning. She first went to the kitchen and boiled the porridge. Then she went to the courtyard to add water to the stable's water trough. He Yinsheng loved the horse as much as his life. In the past, he would feed the horse himself. However, he was busy with the studies and left early and returned late every day. He really could not take care of the horse all the time, so he gave this glorious task to Qing Mei. Qing Mei did not dare to neglect and treated Xiang Xiang as the third young master in the residence. She took good care of him. In the past, when she walked to the stables, Xiang Xiang would hear her voice and pace back and forth. However, today he was unusually quiet. Qing Mei was a little worried. Was he sick? Recently, the weather had been very cold. Even people could easily catch a cold, let alone horses. Qing Mei walked to the front of the stable and took a look with the lantern in her hand. In a split second, she was stunned. A moment later, she came back to her senses and hurriedly ran towards He Yan's house. As she ran, she shouted, young lady, it's not good. Xiang Xiang has been stolen." The door was pushed open, and Qing Mei's voice stopped abruptly. The room was empty, and there was no one in sight. Her heart was in a state of panic. She looked around, but didn't see He Yan's shadow. After staring blankly for a moment, she burst into tears. Bang! The door was opened again, and a man's voice sounded in the courtyard. What happened? Qi Wu rubbed his forehead. He had to admit that the He family was really too poor. Other than the 3 rooms in the courtyard, there were no other guest rooms. He Sui was an honest person. He wanted to give his room to Qi Wu. He Yinsheng also reluctantly agreed to live in the same room as Qi Wu, but Chi Wu flatly refused. Although he didn't pay attention to his daily life, he didn't want to risk his life to become a bodyguard in someone else's residence to protect the master's safety. He even had to protect the master's main room. In the end, after thinking about it, Sui could only vacate the innermost room in the courtyard, which was filled with junk. This room was very small. After removing the junk, there was only enough room for one bed. If Chi Wu wanted to walk, he had to walk sideways. Although he was also a bodyguard in a Xiao family, the treatment was very different. Although the He family had tried their best to provide him with the best conditions, Chi Wu often wished that he could pay out of his own pocket so that the He family could move to a bigger residence. Last night, he kept watch for the first half of the night and went back to his room to rest in the second half of the night. When he woke up at this moment, he heard this young maidservant crying her heart out, so he got up to ask. Qingmei turned around and was shocked to see Chi Wu. Chi Wu was usually quiet in the courtyard. He didn't eat with them and only slept in the junk room at night. He really didn't have much of a presence. Sometimes, Qingmei almost forgot that he was still in the room. At this moment, when Chi Wu appeared, Qingmei seemed to have found a life-saving straw. She rushed up and said, "Young Master Chi Wu, young Miss and Xiang Xiang are missing. They were taken away." Chi Wu was speechless. He said, "I'll go and take a look." Ian's bedroom was gaudy. There were fragrant sachets and red curtains hanging everywhere. Chi Wu was shocked. If he didn't have to go in, he wouldn't want to see these things. He didn't expect Yin to be so pampered under his casual appearance. He had to tell Bai Rongwei about this when he returned. When Bai Rongwei decorated Xiao Ju's room in the future, it would be exactly what Yin wanted. He only took a few glances and walked out of the room. Qingmei followed him. "Young Master Chi Wu, how was it?" "She wasn't taken away. She left on her own." "How is that possible?" Qingmei didn't believe him. How could young Miss leave on her own without saying anything? Even if she wanted to leave, she would have told us. "Young Master Chi Wu." She looked at Chi Wu suspiciously. "Don't tell me you're afraid that you can't report to Military Governor Xiao, so you're pushing the responsibility to our young miss?" Chi Wu couldn't take it anymore. "Young miss, look carefully. Before your young miss was taken away, she carefully folded the bedding. The bedding was folded using the method used by the new recruits of the Liang Province Guard. It was square, like a square piece of tofu. It was obvious that it was made by Yin. May I ask, which assassin would wait for someone to fold the bedding before taking them away? Qingmei, but it's one thing to capture someone, but this one has never seen someone capture both a person and a horse. Qingmei didn't say anything. After a while, she seemed to have forgotten all the accusations and suspicions she had for Chi Wu. She asked politely, "Then young Master Chi Wu, can you think of why young Miss left without saying goodbye? Forgive this one for not knowing." She was also angry. There was only Qingmei and him in this courtyard. Looking at Qingmei's silly appearance, Yin didn't need to go through so much trouble to sneak out of the Fu. Without a doubt, it was to prevent him from following her. Now that she was gone, if the young master asked about it later, he would definitely be in trouble. Yin left easily by herself, leaving him a mess of chicken feathers. He already knew that this trip to the He family wasn't going to be a good one. Sure enough, it was. What do we do now? Do we report to the authorities? Qingmei was at a loss. She could only stare at the only person in front of her who could still speak. Chi Wu said, "No need. I'll go look for her." Since Yin snuck out, it was very likely that she was doing something she didn't want others to know about. It wouldn't be good to report it to the authorities and blow up the matter. He had only taken one step when his sleeve was pulled. Chi Wu turned around to look. Qingmei grabbed him as if she was afraid that he would leave without saying goodbye. "I'll go with you." "No need. I'm the only one in this courtyard. Even Xiang Xiang isn't here." The young maidservant pursed her lips as if she was about to cry. She forced herself to hold it in. "Young Master Chi Wu, I'll go with you to look for her." Chi Wu, he was helpless. All right. Yin could certainly guess how the family would be turned upside down after he left. However, she also believed that Chi Wu could appease Qingmei, that crybaby. She had no other choice. If it wasn't for Mother Qin's good friend, Blacksmith Niu, who only went down the mountain to Chongmao Blacksmith Shop on the 10th of every month, she wouldn't have thought of this idea. She couldn't let Shiwu go with her. She could only sneak out. As for other things, she would wait until she found Mother Qin and solve this matter first. Ever since Xiang came to the He family, Hien had been taking care of her. Occasionally, when he didn't have to go to school, he would take her to the nearby river to run. The little horse ran very fast. Hien left the city very smoothly. He asked the pedestrians along the way and finally arrived at the market at the foot of the barren mountain. This place wasn't as lively as the city. There was only one big market in the nearby villages and towns. On the 10th of every month, all kinds of businessmen would set up stalls here. Some were selling herbs, some were selling old clothes, and some were selling cattle and sheep. It was very lively and dazzling. Ian led the horse to a shop that sold wine. The shopkeeper smiled and greeted him. "Little brother, do you want to buy wine?" Ian dressed up as a man for convenience. He only smiled and said, "I'm going to make a pair of horseshoes for my horse. I heard that there's a blacksmith shop called Changmao Blacksmith Shop nearby." "Shopkeeper, do you know where it is?" When the shopkeeper heard this, he pointed to a direction for Hien. "Follow this road and go straight. When you reach the end, look to your right. That's Changmao Blacksmith Shop." Hien thanked the shopkeeper and led Xiang to the end. When he reached the end of the road, he turned around and saw a shop right in front of him. The words Changmao Blacksmith Shop were scribbled on the shop. Hien tied the horse outside and walked in. There was only a white-haired old blacksmith sitting in front of an iron furnace. He was knocking on a black iron jar. "Master," Hien called out to him. The old blacksmith raised his head and looked at Hien, asking, "What do you want to make?" "Sorry," Hien said. "I'm not here to forge iron. I'm here to inquire about a person called Blacksmith Nyo. I heard that he comes here every day on the 10th of every month. Has he already been here today?" Hien was not sure. Fu Wang only said that Blacksmith Nyo would come every day on the 10th of every month, but he did not say when he would come. With Blacksmith Nyo's cautiousness, he must have left after finishing his business. She left the city and came here. It was almost noon. Blacksmith Nyo might have already been here and left. When the old blacksmith heard this, he stopped what he was doing. He stood up and took a handkerchief soaked in water. He wiped the stains on his hands and said, "Old Nyo has not come today. However, he's late. This is the first time he's late." Hien asked, "Late? On the 10th of every month, in the morning, he will come here to deliver the goods. Old Nyo's craftsmanship is very good." The old blacksmith said with some emotion, "I originally wanted him to come to my shop to help. The monthly salary is much higher than what he would get if he were to work by himself. According to the time, he should be here this morning to hand over the 10 iron sickles that I asked him to make last month. However, it's almost noon now." The old blacksmith looked at the sun outside and said, "He hasn't come yet. Maybe he was delayed by something on the way." Hien said this, but her heart sank. She was afraid that Su Zhiheng had already found Mother Qin's whereabouts before her. Therefore, she could not see Blacksmith Nyo now. Old Nyo is a reliable person. If there's nothing important, he won't be late. The old blacksmith asked Hien, "Gongzi, why are you looking for him? Ever since I met him, he has always been alone." "Gongzi knows old Nyo." Hien smiled and said, "I don't really know him. I'm looking for him because I want to ask him about some things." The old blacksmith nodded and pointed to a wooden plank at the side. "Gongzi, please sit here. We'll talk when old Nyo arrives." Hien sat down. However, he did not expect that he would sit for an entire day. The sun gradually set and the sky began to darken. The old blacksmith finished his work for the day. He washed his hands and changed his clothes. He stood up and said to Hien, "Gongzi, it seems that old Nyo won't be coming today. The market is about to end. I'm going to close the shop." He tactfully indicated that it was time for Hien to leave. Hien's heart sank like a piece of shirt-too. He forced a smile and said, "Okay." However, he was still worried and said to the old blacksmith solemnly, "Master, please don't mention today's matter to anyone. Blacksmith Nyo is the same. In a few days, I'll come again." After the old blacksmith agreed, Hien led his horse and left. The people in the market dispersed in twos and threes. There was only a mess left after the bustle during the day. A mother and son from a poor family were bending over to pick up the leftovers. The lanterns in the distance gradually lit up. He led his horse and walked slowly. It was hard for him to be happy. He originally thought that Fu Wang had found a clue and came here today to find Mother Qin's whereabouts from Blacksmith Niu. However, he did not expect to find anything. For the past few months, Blacksmith Niu would go to the blacksmith shop on time every month to deliver the goods. However, he did not come today. He waited from morning to night and disappeared. It was not a matter of time. Either Blacksmith Niu took Mother Qin and moved away again, or he could not come back. He Yan's eyes darkened. When he returned home, the house was already in chaos. He Sui was not back yet, and He Yunsheng was preparing to go out. The whole family was noisy. When He Yin led his horse back, Qing Mei was at the door. When she saw He Yin, she thought that she had seen wrongly. She rubbed her eyes and rushed over, shouting, "Miss, you're back." He Yin did not have time to speak before He Yunsheng took the lead and put on a punitive look. He said, "Where did you go? You even took Xiang with you." For a moment, He Yin didn't know whether he was concerned about Xiang or himself. After thinking for a moment, he said, "I just had nothing to do today. I haven't been out these days, so I took Xiang out for a walk. Since you wanted to go out, why didn't you take her with you?" He Yunsheng looked at Qi Wu, who was silent at the side. "You didn't even say goodbye." "Ah," He Yin pretended to be surprised. "I left a note on the table before I left. Didn't you see it? If you didn't see it, perhaps a swallow flew in from outside and took it away. It's the middle of winter. How could it be a swallow?" He Yunsheng looked coldly at her, lying. "Where did you go?" "I just went out for a walk. I didn't do anything. I saw that it was still early and Qi Wu was not awake yet. I thought that I shouldn't wake him up. Anyway, I'll be back in a while. I didn't expect that I would forget the time as soon as I went out. I'm sorry. I was playful this time. It won't happen again." He Yin apologized without any sincerity. "Qi Wu, was she saying that he was sleeping too soundly?" He Yunsheng was angry. "He Yin, I'm hungry. Did Qing Mei cook?" He Yin touched his stomach. It was true. She had waited in the blacksmith shop for the whole day and did not leave at all. She was afraid that she would miss Blacksmith Niu at the last moment. She even bought 2 steam buns at the door to eat. I did. Qing Mei quickly went to the kitchen to bring out the food. "Miss, if you're hungry, eat first. This servant has been heating up the porridge. It's just right to taste it now." "Thank you," He Yin replied with a smile. He Yunsheng was angry at He Yin, but there was nothing he could do. He Yin had never been able to control what she wanted to do. For a moment, he was angry and helpless. He could only sit down at the table with He Yin. He picked up the chopsticks and ate without tasting the food. Qi Wu stood by the door. He was also puzzled. He Yin had been out for the whole day. On this day, he and Qing Mei looked everywhere for He Yin, but they could not find her. He Yunsheng almost went to report it to the authorities. He Yin looked safe and sound, and there were not many flaws in her expression. But where did she go? In a room in a remote courtyard, a man and a woman sat opposite each other. They were not young anymore. The man's skin was dark, and his face was full of wrinkles. His fingers were dirty, but he was strong and strong. One look, and one could tell that he was a man who worked hard. The woman was in her 40s. Although her clothes were ordinary and unremarkable, her skin was tender, and she looked like a middle-aged woman. She did not look like she had suffered. The man was in a better state, but the woman looked particularly frightened. Their hands and feet were tied with ropes, and they couldn't move even half a step. Their mouths could still speak, but after calling for a long time, no one came to answer. "Old Nyo, what's going on?" the woman asked. Her voice was full of panic. This man and woman were Blacksmith Niu and his lover, Mother Qin, whom He Yin was looking for. Blacksmith Niu shook his head. This man looked dull, but his eyes were sharp. He looked around and said, "Maybe they're from the Su family." Upon hearing the 2 words, Su family, Mother Qin's entire body couldn't help but tremble. She had entered the Su family with He Wanru. He Wanru was favored, and, as a nanny, she also lived a good life. She ate and used much better than when she was in the He family. Unfortunately, the good times did not last long. Ever since He Wanru died, she lived a life of wandering and hiding. Mother Qin could not help but shudder at the thought of He Wanru's death. He Wanru was raised by her. Although she was a little arrogant, she trusted her nanny very much. Nanny Qin had reminded He Wanru before that some things were secrets, and the fewer people who knew about them, the better. If someone told you the secret without any concealment, it was not because they trusted you, but because you were already a dead person in their eyes. The dead could keep secrets the best. She had tried to persuade He Wanru to pack up her belongings and escape with her. Unfortunately, He Wanru did not believe her, so He Wanru died in the Su family's residence. Before He Wanru died, Mother Qin had predicted her fate. She wrote a letter to her old lover, hoping that Blacksmith Niu could help take care of her family after she died. Although Blacksmith Niu was a craftsman who did rough work, he had a flexible mind. He also had some feelings for Nanny Qin, so he gave Nanny Qin an idea. He thought that if she died, Nanny Qin's children and grandchildren would still be in danger. It was better to escape. Su Zhiheng might not dare to do anything to Mother Qin's family because of his misgivings. When Mother Qin heard this, she felt that Blacksmith Niu's words were reasonable. As for where to escape, it was naturally up to Blacksmith Niu. For the past year, she and Blacksmith Niu had been hiding in the barren mountains and had indeed lived a peaceful life. But last night, for some reason, a group of strangers suddenly broke into the thatched hut on the mountain and easily subdued them. When they woke up, they were already in this room. "Old Niu, are we going to die?" Mother Qin asked timidly. "They found us and won't let us live, my grandson, and you. I've implicated you." Blacksmith Niu said, "Ah, Qin, don't be afraid. I don't think they want our lives." Mother Qin raised her head. "What did you say? If there was a chance to live, who would want to die so easily?" Mother Qin also did not want to die. When she heard Blacksmith Niu's words, a glimmer of light flashed through her eyes. If it was Su Zhiheng, he would have taken action when he found us. He would not have let us live until now. Blacksmith Niu comforted her. "At least we are not in danger now." Then you mean that the person who caught us was not Master Su?" Mother Qin asked in confusion. "Then why did he catch us?" "I don't know either." Mother Qin fell silent. Sometimes, the fear of the unknown was the scariest. The other party just left the two of them here and did not ask about them. It was more suspicious than if he had revealed his identity from the beginning. After an unknown period of time, someone's voice sounded from outside. Mother Qin's spirits rose. She looked expectantly at the closed door. The door was pushed open and someone walked in. The first to enter were two black-clothed people, a man and a woman. Their expressions did not reveal anything. The last to enter was a young man. He was exceptionally handsome. Based on his clothes, he did not seem to be from an ordinary family. Mother Qin had served the Su family for many years. She still had a bit of insight. When she saw the three people, she knew that the handsome young man was the master. She immediately said, "Sir, spare my life. Sir, spare my life." However, Blacksmith Niu did not say a word. He only silently sized up the newcomers. The handsome young man sat down on a chair in the middle of the room. The two black-clothed people stood by his side. His gaze swept past the two of them and finally landed on Mother Qin. His expression was clearly calm, but it made Mother Qin shiver. "You are the wet nurse of the Su family's Wanru?" that person asked. Mother Qin's heart sank. She had originally held onto a fluke, but now that this person spoke, she understood that he was here for the Su family secret. She said, "Indeed, sir." Before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted by the other party. The young man said indifferently, "How did Wanru die?" If he lies, he will die." He raised his chin slightly and looked in Blacksmith Niu's direction. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.